Yeah, just to introduce you guys real quick, thanks for both coming and entertaining this idea. And so Lisa, Christian, and I have known each other for only about 3 weeks or 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Seems like longer. But remember, time's not real.
Yeah.
Time is just an illusion. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
Lisa, I couldn't hear you on that one. And there's sometimes a little bit of lag. Have you noticed that, Christian?
Yeah, sometimes that happens. It's happened even between you and me, but then it doesn't always stay, and then it...
I didn't hear the last thing you said, Lisa. Can you say it again?
So, yeah, it's an illusion. So, did you hear that clear?
Yes.
Yep.
Brilliant. I just think if I keep to be too animated, because I am a little bit animated, so I'll keep still.
Great. People like that. People like animated, so it's a good quality. Yeah, okay, so Christian and I have known each other for 3 weeks, but feels like longer because in the 3 weeks, we spent the first week just exchanging like hundreds of links of all the things we've researched, and we're talking all the time practically. And yeah, we pretty much agree on most things. I mean, I haven't gone to where he's gone in multi-dimensions and multiple parallel universes. I just can't imagine that, and I just don't buy it yet. But
I'll get him
he's
over
there.
Yeah, exciting.
But for everything NDE related, near-death experience related, Christian and I have both researched the heck out of it. I've watched hundreds of firsthand recounts of near-death experiences through YouTube, and I watch them like practically every night, and I learn so much, and they're also fun to watch. So I've watched hundreds of them, and then I've also watched like dozens of physicians discussing it, physicians that are on the front line. And I believe now that the only people you can really trust are the people that have gone through NDEs and the physicians. That scientists are resisting it. You know, they're just pulling anything out of the bag that they can to say that it's fake or a hallucination or whatever. But yeah.
I'm just gonna. I think though the whole universe is kind of like opening up more to it now. I think like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, everyone was like that. You know, that's not real. That doesn't exist. But I feel there's something in the air now in the universe, and people are like more open to it. And or maybe there is something out there. That's like in the UK. That's happening more. I don't know about where you guys are. If that's the thing.
Yeah.
Christian, do you want to take this one? Or?
Yeah, and my name is Christian. I'm an independent researcher. So I've been looking into this topic for many years, especially after having my own like weird experiences, seeing spirits, mediumship stuff that's happened to me personally, prophetic dreams, and I wanted to understand it all. So I started delving into stuff. I had one particular dream, which actually, after having this dream, it was just kind of like this knowing. And it was strange because nothing near-death experience related really happened in the dream, with the exception of meeting a deceased loved one. And I just had the understanding that I had to start looking up near-death experiences. It was just like in me. I had to do it. I got up, I started watching videos, and I kept getting hungry and hungry. And Lisa's right. She's correct. People are kind of like waking up, and this is becoming more mainstream, especially with resuscitation techniques that we have now. So people are more and more getting brought back from that brink of death. And scientists and doctors are starting to look into it, take it more seriously. And Dr. Raymond Moody actually coined the term near-death experience in the 1970s, which is his book actually led a lot of other scientists and other researchers and doctors to look and take this topic more seriously, which is pretty awesome.
Is that Life After Life?
No,
Raymond
that's...
I think he did.
He wrote a book, yeah. I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but yeah, that's the one I haven't gotten to yet. I've gotten to like every other book, but yeah, he did write a book. It's on my list. I have a backlog of books.
A pleasant guy, by the way, Raymond Moody. I've seen him talk.
He's a great speaker too. Yeah.
You could get different like experts and different people you've like read and books you've read, because I don't know, there's no many out there. I've just gone from what I felt, my own intuition in my own life. But this is amazing. If there's lots of books out there, I shall be. You have to give us some details.
Oh, yeah, many.
You know, I'm Kevin Teman, the creator of Artificially Intelligent Matchmaker, AIMM, which is a talking dating app that gets to know you over a week by asking you questions just like a friend would, and then automatically introduces you to people. And I created this after a human matchmaking service. So it's a replication of human matchmaking because I had a lot of trouble dating and with dating apps. And I've been interested in near-death experiences for a while. I'm 39 now, 39. And when I was 38, I had a personal assistant who told me about her near-death experience in detail. And that was a pivot point for me, changed my life because it was so real coming from her. And then I paired it together with the near-death experience that I had when I was younger, about 23. I fell back, hit my head on the concrete. All the blood went out of my head. And I woke up sometime later and remember hearing the crush of my skull hitting the ground. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to this dark place that's not exactly dark. I'll tell more of the story later, but I made a decision to live and then came back. And at the time, I just knew in my mind that you decide when you live or die. And I kept that with me, and I just knew. It was like a solid data point mixed with all my other experiences in the past. And so then I started looking into near-death experiences. And as I researched them, I found out they all corroborated with what my assistant had told me. And the thing about my assistant's story is she was really young. She was only 18 when it happened to her. And so she was really confused by it, like a lot of the child NDEs, where they still have them, but they're confused or they have to mature suddenly from them. And she didn't know what was going on. And she didn't know anything about NDEs. And even when she told me about it at age 25, 7 years later, she was confused at which reality is the real reality. She still thinks to this day that the NDE place she went to is the real reality. And she's perpetually confused. And she's excited to go back. She's looking forward to the process of dying when it happens. But she doesn't know anything about near-death experiences. So that was why it was so pure to get her story. She didn't even know that other people had experienced the tunnel and all that stuff that she went through too. So this is, I haven't had enough personal experience to know that it's actually happening in a real thing. And then when I started watching all the near-death experiences, it became very clear. There's just a theme running through all of them, and there's just thousands of people that have already gone through it. And science is trying to make an attempt to sort of basically discard them because they don't fit with today's model of material only, that our brain produces consciousness, which is not true if you look into it. So that's the way I feel for my quick introduction. And to answer Lisa's question, definitely people are waking up to it in the U.S. also. Christian and I have been talking about this for weeks. Yeah. There's so many things coming out that are just people, even the leading scientists are already recognizing. I watch podcasts of maybe the leading thinkers talking about what are the latest scientific theories. And people are now starting to realize that materialism only, where the brain creates consciousness, it's starting to be a dead end. And they're starting to say it's failing and we're kind of going to throw it out, and it's been a long mistake. So Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself? Whatever you can say.
No, what you done?
A woman of mystery.
So I'm Lisa Holly Palmer. I'm in the UK. I'm in London, and I'm a matchmaker. That's how I kind of got to know Kevin. So we're kind of hopefully doing something together. But so I matchmake globally, and I've got a TV show coming out around matchmaking, which is super exciting. So we're about to start filming that shortly. But my experience, I must admit, when I was young, I kind of felt there was something there, and I used to see people, like images running, like as if it was like a shadow going past me. But as a kid, I was like, oh, this is nonsense, and kind of didn't really believe in it. And it only took me till my grandma passed. She passed away, and we were really close. And I can't remember if it was the third day after she passed. I was asleep, hadn't been drinking, hadn't done anything, just lying asleep. And it was in the middle of the night. I think it was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I felt something sit on my bed. I literally just sort of woke up, and it was as if I was wide awake. And I looked out, and I saw my nan, clear as day, sitting on my bed. And but she didn't look how she used to look, because when she was going through an illness and she got cancer, and she had cancer for 10 years, so she lost a lot of weight. She was down to about 7 stone, and she didn't look well. But when so when I was asleep and she came at the end of my bed, she looked like so well, and she sort of looked at me and smiled, but I hid under my duvet because I was scared. I was only in my 20s. I think I was 26, 27. And I was absolutely petrified. I said, Nan, please go away. And I was shaking, and I didn't go up till the next morning. But that was my first ever kind of experiencing sort of, ghosts or spirit or whatever everyone wants to call it. It was brilliant. But at the time it was petrifying. But I've evolved a lot, and lots of things have happened to me since. I don't want to take over too much. I don't know if you want me to talk about those or...
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'd love to get into all of those.
Yeah, no, you can share all your experiences.
So, I think as well, it depends where you live. Because when I moved, I was in this particular house. I was living there, and I'd be cooking and turn around, and I'd look out the window, and as if I'd see like people like running past. I couldn't actually see them like the actual face or anything like that, but I'd just see like a shadow, and it kind of like freaked me out. But the more and more I saw it, I just felt comfortable with it. And that was sort of like a few years after my nan had passed, and I sort of seen spirits. So I thought, okay, I started to feel comfortable with it. And then I think as soon as I did feel comfortable with it, I used to sort of get like feelings like someone was in like the room, or it's just weird. But having, I don't know if you guys have ever had this. So I had past life regression. So it's a bit like hypnotherapy, but it's kind of, I don't know if you've had hypnotherapy. It's a bit like you're half asleep, you're half awake, but you're only driven from A to B. You know you got there, but sometimes you're not quite sure how you got there. And that's kind of like how hypnotherapy is. So you're still in the room, you're still, your conscious is still aware. And I went back to some past lives, and I literally felt all the feelings. I got woken up. I could feel like the pain. I had one where I passed away, but I felt the pain, not like it hurt me, but I literally like jumped while I was in the kind of like memory going back in this past life. And it's just incredible. And if you'd have asked me that like 20 years ago, I just thought, what a load of rubbish. But I think until you've like gone through the experience or had that, it was just amazing. And if you like had kind of like a past life regression, but it is really truly incredible. And I believe from doing that and my experiences that I believe we've been on this planet many times. For me, I have, and you keep coming back. You're a soul, and you come back in different bodies and just like experience different things. And I feel like we come here to learn different experiences, emotions. We have to go through all these emotions, and that's kind of like what I feel. No one's told me this. I have no clue. I could be wrong, but that's what I feel in my soul, in my gut, when I get these feelings, or I just know I've been here many times. And a bit like deja vu, I've been somewhere, a place I'm like, you've been here, I know it. And how on earth do I know? Because it's not been on the telly. I wasn't a great reader, to be honest, because I'm dyslexic, so I didn't really read. I've only just started reading the last few years, and I'm making myself read. So as a kid, I'd never read. So I knew I hadn't seen these images. And at home, I was mainly out as a kid playing. So the only thing I did used to watch is Coronation Street, which is quite sad, and Incredible Hulk as a kid. So I knew I hadn't seen these places that existed. And I was like, what is this? So totally believe in reincarnation and coming back here and learning and feeling, but I've never had a near-death experience. I haven't had that.
Well, just got a remark. Christian and I have come to the same conclusion about reincarnation. I've come to that conclusion based on just research. I don't necessarily have a gut feeling that's telling me reincarnation is the thing. But from looking at all the near-death experiences, a lot of people have that conclusion when they come back from near-death experiences. They know for sure,
and they fear
that's the way.
They end up losing the fear of death as well. Yeah.
because that's another crazy thing. I was always scared of dying. And through doing, I've done some other things as well, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I'm not scared of dying. I don't want to die, don't get me wrong, but I'm actually looking forward to it when I do, because I know I'm going to see my like people who've passed, see spirits and that, and then I know I'm going to come back on Earth again to haunt you all. But I know I will be coming back, and I'm really excited again. So I'm not worried about dying. I don't want to die yet. I've got lots to do on this planet, but yeah, I'm not scared anymore.
I'm not worried either, and my assistant, she's not worried either. And whenever she says that, people say, "You need therapy." Don't don't, like they consider her suicidal or something. And if a lot of people would say, I'm looking forward to dying, people would think you're, they got to correct you or whatever. But that's the way I truly feel, and I've not had a full near-death experience. I count mine as like a tenth of one. Because I did go to a place that is usually the staging area where a lot of NDEs start. It's this blank area where there's nothing right before they go into the tunnel. And I was in that staging area because it was the way I described it. It was like it wasn't black like a black room. It was just empty and dark, but it wasn't scary. It was neutral. I didn't feel an overwhelming sense of love. I don't think I got far enough into it. But I just remember being in that place, and I remember in that place is where I decided to live or die. And there was a real conscious decision made there. And when I came back, it was just clear as day that I was in that spot for a while. So having seen research all the other NDEs, I now am also not afraid of death. I wasn't afraid of death even before I started looking at NDEs. I always thought, I used to ride motorcycles. I used to go really fast, 150 miles an hour on the highway to get a fun thrill, but I kind of knew what I was doing. So I wasn't just risking my life totally. But I thought if I fell off my motorcycle and died, if my chain broke or something, that I would die happy, doing something exciting that I loved in the moment. And I always had that mindset of if you die doing something exciting, it's probably going to be good. But
that's incredible. I can't believe you felt like that, because I don't know if you felt like that, but I was literally petrified. I was so scared of dying. I really was. But I as I say, I'm not now. That's weird how you were always okay with it. How did you feel, Christian? Was you scared?
Just to clarify, it was a dual thing for me. I didn't want to die because I've considered my life very important, and I wanted to grow up and do a lot of important things and make an impact. So I was scared in that way, but I was not scared of dying in a way that is enjoyable. I thought it would be better than dying in a terrible way, on a deathbed, lonely or something.
And for me, when I was younger, I had to get surgery, and they put me to sleep, and I was very young, so I was in middle school. And as soon as I went out, or, my consciousness, I fell asleep, I went somewhere. And what's interesting is it's actually brought up in one of the books on the science of near-death studies by Dr. Jeffrey Long and some others, that anesthesia is not normal sleep. You're not supposed to dream under anesthesia. But I remember my consciousness going somewhere, and I was very detached from this lifetime, so I didn't even remember Christian or anything like that. I just remember where I was going. I could see something like a nebula, and I had this awareness. I was a sphere of awareness. And when I was coming to, I remembered in my mind, like hearing my voice saying, "Don't forget that you died, you died, you died, you died, you died, don't forget, don't forget." And I kept saying it over and over. And then I came to, and then I was in the hospital, and that's when I was like, where am I? And then I started to recollect myself, and I thought it was just a dream. I was in middle school. I didn't know anything about this. And I've also had my own conscious out-of-body experience where I had sleep paralysis, and then I ended up popping out of my body, floating near the ceiling, and having the thought, "Oh my God, this is real." And then I snapped back in to my body, and then my body convulsed, and my girlfriend at the time woke up, and she was like, "You all right?" And I was just like, "I just left my body. I just left my body." I like freaked out. I was telling her everything. And it's from that point of view, from that perspective, it's absolutely real once you experience it, but it's hard to convince others that it's real. But it was just as real as us having this conversation right now. So that's how you can compare it, I guess.
Down my body. And for me, like that's a sign. That's what I always feel like when, even if something's happening in life, you know, like if you're doing a work thing or something, you've got a deal coming through, or you know, a financial deal or an investment deal, I get shivers down my legs, and I know that's the right thing to do. But when you said that, I literally got shivers all down my legs and arms, and I know for me that's the universe or something telling me yes, that's true. So that's I don't know. That's how I.
I get those feelings too.
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah, especially it's, and we can go into it in a bit. I'm curious about your experiences, but like when I've communicated with beings or deceased loved ones, that communication that's happening. You mentioned you had something like that. I don't know if you do, or talking with guides or anything.
Yes, so I do. Yeah, so so I had I went and learned Reiki. I don't know if you have heard of that. So it's
I'm
like
Reiki certified.
Process. Oh, you? Oh, so
Yeah.
and that,
you guys.
apparently.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I told you, you've got to go and try it, Kevin. So and they apparently like they open you up, you know, to like be able to communicate more to the universe, and you can get sort of more like I don't know. They sort of said like most of us, we're only open slightly to the universe, and they can only communicate one way. But they like do an enchantment and alignment, and you can open you up and you communicate more. And since doing that, I've felt I literally hear. It sounds like I'm crazy, and I'm not. Like I hear things, you know, like as if like people, spirits talking to me, communicating me. Yeah, not all the time, you know, and but I like I know something and they tell me, and I'm like, right, okay, that's right. So a couple of experiences I had. So a long time ago, I was leaving my ex-partner, my ex-husband, and I was really, because I wanted to go, but I didn't. You know, it's quite a terrifying thing to walk out and have my son. And I was so scared, and I thought, what am I going to do? You know, like, am I doing the right thing? I was like 99.9% sure this was the right thing, but I just needed that confirmation. So, and this particular day, I just thought I just had to ask. So I was walking in this field. There was a few trees miles away. There was nothing else. The sky was clear. There's nobody else in this field. And I looked up and I asked, and I thought, you know, you think, God, I hope no one's watching me. I couldn't see anybody. And I just said, please give me a sign. Am I doing the right thing? Am I supposed to leave him? You know, I want to, but. And honestly, people think I'm mad, but I literally had it was like a bright light and a white feather came down like this. It's giving me shivers now. A white feather came down, and it just felt like that was like, yes, Lisa, you know. And I've had so many things happen, things like that. So I've asked the universe or angels, guides, it's happened. So I was going on another story. I was going on a date with this guy, and I just wasn't too sure about him. I had a feeling, and I said, my son was at school at the time, and he'd get the school bus, and he'd been on it for about 4 or 5 years, and the bus always turned up, no problem. And I asked for this particular day, I said to the universe, I said, if I'm not supposed to go on this date, can you make the school bus broke down? And you know, you just think, yeah, like that's really going to happen. And I wish, I don't even know, I might still have a message on my phone. Anyway, forgot all about it. This was like in the morning. Got to the car park to pick up my son, like, it was about 3 or 4 hours later. And he's messaging me, Mum, the school buses broke down. I'm like, are you kidding me? I just couldn't believe it. And then you think, is this a jinx? You know, and I thought, no, you know, and he's like, I can't believe, you know, I didn't tell my son, so he probably think, oh God, Mum, I didn't want to tell him I was going on a date. But and I did on the date, and yeah, it was the worst thing I ever did. So so yeah, the guides, the universe, I feel, give us signs and just ask, and
all the time.
You know, they're here to help us. I believe.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I think this is going to be really fun because Christian and I both have a lot of research knowledge on near-death experiences in a lot of cases that we've researched and know what happens to people. And Lisa's had some spiritual experiences, and while she's not had an NDE exactly, she's got an insight into how you can communicate that way, and also reincarnation. She's got a gut feeling that exists, and these are reaffirmed in thousands of near-death experience cases as well. So I wanted to go over the themes and how people actually come to the conclusion of reincarnation. So I'll touch on reincarnation to start. That when people experience an NDE, and to just briefly outline what happens again for everybody, is that once they die, this is if they have a heart attack or they have bacterial meningitis is a common way people experience NDEs. But any time where you're about to die, about 20% of all people that are dying experience NDEs, according to a latest statistic. I personally believe that everybody experiences it. It's just that they don't come back to report it necessarily.
Some people
or
are
that
afraid.
they never report it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but 20% of people do report it, and so you got 20% of something like 20% of all people. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, it's around that number.
20%?
And they say that they think the number is higher. It's just that some people are afraid. People get ridiculed, and it's hard because either the family doesn't listen to them, and sometimes they think it's safe to go to church or something because maybe church will listen to me and maybe the people there, and that's not the case either because it conflicts with their beliefs. So they feel isolated. So a lot of people don't end up. Sometimes it takes them some people over 20 years to just finally come out and admit that what happened to them, because
they're actually doing it now.
I've mentioned it to friends and people thought I'm crazy, so I haven't talked about it. So this is the first year I've ever talked about it.
Yeah,
you're in the right place. But yeah, so yeah, about 20% of people experience it, but it happens when they're dying, and they're usually rushed to the medical room, the ER, while this is happening, and the doctors are trying to resuscitate them. And I think most near-death experiences happen when the brain is completely flatlined, that there's no activity in the brain, and also the heart stops pumping blood. It's when they're officially declared dead, and that official declaration of when they're dead is now moving because of this stuff. They don't know when consciousness actually stops. And physicians, if you watch physicians, they'll pretty much all are writing the line between what's actually happening in this NDE world. It doesn't check out with modern science of materialism at all. So there, and then how do we declare them dead, and when are they actually dead, and we can't resuscitate them? And Sam Perneal, I think Perneal was his last name.
I think Pernia.
Pernia. Sam Pernia is a great physician that has come out and started talking about this, and he's just saying that he thinks that consciousness continues indefinitely, or he doesn't know how long, but for sure we don't know when it's unrecoverable.
Right.
That now people can die, and it can be 8 hours later. There was a case of somebody that woke up almost in the morgue, and was just back to life.
There have been cases that I've found that. Sorry. Go ahead.
And in general, Arnia is saying that at any time they could come back, and he doesn't really see a time limit.
Yeah, there have been cases where people have been found dead for over a day and then coming back, and it freaks people out. Right before they're gonna, start cutting them open and take out the organs for a funeral or something, the person wakes up, and it freaks them out. And
the scary movie.
Yeah,
that has just freaked me out.
Yeah.
I'm like, my goodness, I didn't know that.
But we do.
Scared in those scary movies. That's real.
And they have many, many strong cases which support what scientists are now calling filter theory, that the brain is more like a radio, receiving a signal from somewhere else, and that signal is what consciousness is. And I always talk about these cases. They're some of my favorites, and there are many more than these, but I like focusing on these. Are the case of Pam Reynolds and the case of Dr. Eben Alexander. To start with Dr. Eben Alexander.
Sure. Can you explain Pam Reynolds for us?
Sure.
I've never heard.
Pam Reynolds, her case is very significant because she had a massive brain aneurysm, and this was in the 90s. So they didn't really have like a mainstream like procedure to take care of this. And the reason that this was so difficult, and I'll put it up on the screen here, is that her aneurysm was at the base of like the brain stem. So it's very hard to get to. Like, how do we get to that aneurysm, remove it without killing her?
The operation Pam was about to undergo was known as Operation Standstill. Pam's body temperature would be lowered to between 10 and 15 degrees centigrade. Her heart and breathing stopped, her brain waves flattened, and the blood drained from her head. She would be clinically dead for a whole hour of the operation.
What we want to do is we want to bring that brain to a halt. We don't just want the brain to be asleep. We want the metabolic activity of the brain to stop. Every measurable output that the body puts out really disappears completely, so that you have no measurable neuronal activity whatsoever. Prior to the operation starting, a lot of activity goes on. The patient is put to sleep. The eyes are taped shut. There are little clicking devices put in each ear in order to monitor the brain. The patient is then completely covered. The only thing that's really exposed is the area of the head where we work.
What's the question? So there was a doctor who decided to take up her case in Arizona, and he offered this case to her with what's called standstill procedure, or a hypothermic circulatory rest procedure, which involved putting her to sleep, cutting into her femoral artery into her leg, draining her body of blood so that there was no blood in the brain area, and stopping her heart. They gave her a drug that stops all brain activity. The doctor says this himself. It stops the metabolic rate in the brain. That's what he says. And so she's clinically dead for over an hour. No heartbeat, no brain waves. They put clickers into her ears that send decibel loud noises, like clicking sounds, so that they can measure her brain activity like on a screen. They also tape her eyes shut. They cover her face on top of the taped eyes, so only her head is exposed where they're working. And she had a full-blown near-death experience, first starting in the out-of-body experience where she left her body. She was like hovering around the doctors. She could hear what they were saying, and she reports their conversations, also saying that listening to Hotel California was very insensitive of them at the time. So she's like describing the saw that they used to cut into her head, which was very interesting because the doctor was blown away, because he says that saw is not exposed prior to the operation. It's in a case and it's kept closed until she's out for sterile reasons. Yes, she described it, and she said it looked like an electric toothbrush, and that's what it looks like. And she ended up going into, like, feeling pulled, going into a tunnel, meeting her deceased grandmother and uncle, and wanting to stay, not wanting to go back. And they told her, you have to go back. And her uncle pushed her, she said, and then she fell back into her body, and she got mad about that. And she describes this whole experience. She could still see, hear. Meanwhile, her body is flatlined on the table while they're working on her. They also, I forgot to mention that they chill her body down so that it's like very cold. I forgot the temperature, but it's very cold so that the brain, when the brain is very like chilled to that temperature, the body, it makes it less likely for you to have brain damage whenever they start to bring you. Yeah. They
cool the body.
They actually have a machine now that actually pumps cool liquid into the body when somebody has a heart attack. Not every hospital has this, but if you know anyone who has a heart attack, it's a good thing to know. Because with this machine, and I'll find the name for you guys, it helps people who have heart attacks not have brain damage. But again, no brain activity, no heartbeat, yet she had a full-blown experience. And Dr. Eben Alexander had cerebral meningitis, affecting all 8 lobes of his brain. On the Glasgow scale, which is the scale of consciousness, when someone is actually, that's how they measure like full consciousness. I believe it goes up to 15. He was on a scale of 4 or 5 of consciousness with grand mal seizures. Yet he had a full-blown experience that was more real than this reality, when he shouldn't have had an experience at all. So yeah, it is. Those cases are very strong indicators, and the skeptics never mention those cases for consciousness
That's the thing,
outside
they
of.
don't, do they? No
yeah.
one mentions them.
Yeah.
No, the skeptics have techniques, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what happened to my assistant, and she actually happened to be the same as Evan Alexander. She had bacterial meningitis and also grand mal seizures, and she also was in a coma for I think it was 2 weeks. I can't remember the exact time, but she was in a coma, and then she went through an airport and she visited her grandma and had a discussion with her grandma while she was in the NDE world, the other place that to her also felt more real than this reality. And when she woke up in the hospital, her family was asking her, where have you been? What happened? Because they were kind of like standing there and watching her. And she immediately said, I was visiting grandma and I was talking with her. And they all stopped and said, grandma's been dead for 2 months, and my assistant was confused. She was only 18 years old, and she was like kind of scared and confused. She was wondering, where am I now? And where was that place that I just was? And her immediate thought was that place was the real world and that this isn't a real world. And she described to me that she was perpetually confused as to whether she was like trapped in this place and this is the dream and she couldn't get out. She felt kind of scared. She couldn't get out of this, this world that we all share. She thought this was the dream world. And then she didn't talk about it after that. And they kind of like all buried it and she didn't have a chance to talk about it. But whenever her mom asked her about her feelings on it, she would say, death is not bad, Mom. Death is a wonderful thing. I can't wait for it to happen. I'm fine with it happening. And her mom would just kind of not really respond to that, but say, don't, and be worried about her being suicidal. And they tried to put her through a lot of therapy and counseling and for suicidal types of things. But she would always tell me I was never suicidal. It was just, I just love the idea of death and I'm fine with it happening. And then at 25, when she described this to me, 7 years after it happened to her, she still to this day doesn't believe that this world is real, that the other world is the real world. And she's so convinced of that she's kind of scorned. She's and it really touched me deeply. There's nothing I could say to her to change her mind. And she felt like she kind of felt like she was just in this holding place and she doesn't know why she's here, but she's trying to figure it out. She has some confusion about why she's back here, living and that and all this. And so that was firsthand experience that I saw, and I got all of her emotions raw from it and everything in person. But there's another experience I just saw recently of another guy that had the same thing where he went through his NDE. Typically people go through a tunnel, they visit their deceased relatives. It's almost never alive relatives, like 90 to 95% of the time. It's deceased relatives that they visit and interact with. And that's very significant. And it's a theme across all of them. And Christian and I talked about this in the first podcast. It really points to the fact that it's a real shared experience, that it isn't just made up, created by the brain.
Yeah.
Now, I still have the firm belief for NDEs that if you believe that this is all being made up by the brain, the current science model that we've had for a long time, which I believe is wrong now, that the brain creates consciousness. If you believe that the brain created this entire experience and it's all kind of a trick, that it's not a shared place, that I still say to you that it's still incredibly important. Don't discard near-death experiences just because you don't believe it's a shared place. Even if it's not a shared place, the fact that there's these 12 themes that exist in every near-death experience that happens, and that it profoundly changes the person after in their whole life, or the rest of their life. They remember it so perfectly in detail. That there's so many things that are so important about this that reveal things about consciousness, the thing that exists in all of us that's working.
Right.
So don't ignore them. But my second point is that if you really look into them and you watch enough of them, you'll realize it is a shared place that they're going to. And one of the pointers is the fact that it's always deceased relatives, but that they visit with, but there's many other pointers. And just to name a couple, children experience NDEs the same way adults do. They don't have this childlike, watered down version where it's just like, they're in a candy store or something and nothing matters or whatever, like a dream would be. It's always the same types of themes. They're traveling, they're reviewing their life. They're reviewing their life from the perspective of every person they interacted with and feeling the emotions of every person they interacted with. And then they also go through the process of deciding whether they want to return or whether they want to stay. And it's a real mature decision that they have to make. And when children come back from the NDE, they're suddenly more mature. And typically it's adults that are talking about their childhood experiences. There's not a lot of children. There's a few. But typically it's an adult talking about it, but they described, and people around them described, that they suddenly matured. And this is obvious. If you watch enough NDEs, you'll see adults also are somehow on another level of maturity than a regular person. They're just like superhumans now. It's the way I would describe them. They're just so grounded, and they've got this knowledge and this channel of what happens afterwards, and they're coming from a place of love now, all the time in their life, and it's a drastic change in their demeanor, and people like to be around them more and stuff. And this happens with children the same way as it does with adults, so that you don't get a difference because of the themes that an adult have learned. And again, my assistant had not learned about NDEs. She didn't even know what they were. She had the same themes exactly. And so everybody goes and has the same themes. And non-spiritual, religious people or non-religious people, every type of person has the same experience. And as Christian and I were talking about in the last podcast, it was very interesting. The non-spiritual people that really don't believe spirituality at all, and I don't know what they do with their own feeling of consciousness, which is pure magic. The fact that we're even here and existing, how do they conceive of that if they don't believe in spirituality? That, I think they just put it in a box and they don't talk about it. But those people that aren't spiritual at all, when they go into an NDE, the first thing that happens is confusion, and they're stunned, and they're looking at their body. And this is repeated in many stories. I remember at least 10 to 20 stories where they're looking at their body on the operating table. They're seeing the doctors. They're realizing that they've died. And those non-spiritual people, they all kind of go through the same process. They're like shocked. They're like, what has happened?
They then become believers afterwards. They're like, right. Okay. and speaking of believers. And speaking of children, you brought up children, and they actually have a show on Netflix called Surviving Death. And in one particular episode, they actually have the director of the DOPS, Division of Perceptual Studies, and he primarily researches reincarnation stories in children. And this was more common in countries like India or the Eastern countries because they accepted it as part of their culture, like reincarnation and stuff like that. So they actually listen to the children, whereas in our culture, we shut children down. Oh, you're imagining it, that kind of talk. And once they started releasing this information, they started getting flooded with messages from the U.S. of children with reincarnation stories. And some of these children are under 5. And the cases he focused on specifically are the cases where they can glean information such as addresses, names, so they can go and validate it. And he'll actually take a trip out to their house, and he has like certain tests too, where he'll take pictures of the biological parents that the child is referencing from the previous lifetime, the house, and he'll show one is wrong and one is correct. And he actually shows in this documentary on Surviving Death on Netflix, he shows the child and he's like, okay, which one was your mom? And he'll show 2 women, and this kid got 5 for 5. The father, the mother, the park they used to play at, the house that they had, and he got them all. And these cases happen, and and the number of cases is just astounding. We're not just talking about a couple hundred here. We're talking about millions, which is very, very profound.
Yeah, the doctors that I've looked at, the physicians, they've studied thousands, 3,500 or something is one person, and there's a lot of organizations, and it said multiple thousands, but there's no doubt that it's happening to a lot more people than millions. I believe it happens to everybody, that it just doesn't always surface and become a story.
Yeah. I think it's special because some people have very different types of near-death experiences, but I hear a lot from them that they will say that their experience was very catered to them. So it's like it's what they needed. It's what got them out of the funk, especially like people who are suicidal or something like that, and they come back. Jeff Tolley is another one that I'm going to try to get on here to share his experience. But he said he was suicidal. He tried to commit suicide, and he came back, and he says it was a wake-up call for him, and it was exactly what he needed to happen to wake him up and to get on the right path again for his life.
Yeah. So, yeah, these near-death experiences, the themes happen to everybody, and so they're pretty consistent, and they come to the realization of reincarnation, among other things. The reincarnation, they realize when they're doing their life review, they're living all the interactions from other people's point of view. So and this has been reaffirmed many, many times. You feel the emotion of every person that you've interacted with, including the people that you've hurt and the people that you've loved. And I think it's really significant, actually, to think about. I don't know why people aren't discussing this more in the NDE side, about people like serial killers or other people that were antisocial and hurt a lot of people and were really considered evil. I think that it's really important to look at NDEs and realize you go through a life review and you live the emotions of every person that you've interacted with.
You become those people.
It is a form of it's kind of like justice, but in the NDE, it's not justice in the way there's no judgment that's happening. The people that are with you in the life review, it's completely judgment free. They're not saying bad. They're just you just live from the other person's point of view everything that occurred, that you did. And so it's like, why you live it. It's something to do with growth for the soul, to just a learning experience to mature the soul. Lots of different theories, but when they go through a life review, they understand the concept of reincarnation automatically. The people that go through NDEs, because they see that they're reviewing like this phase of life. They realize that the human body was a vehicle, and I've heard it described as a vehicle from several of the NDErs. And they also, they make a choice. Every one of them makes a choice whether to go back or stay. And then so it's clear that people go into human bodies, spirits go into human bodies, and they live the life, and then they can leave. And then this is happening, as a cycle. And so people realize that when they come back. And then there's also reports of children that have remembered past lives here. And there's like a lot of reports, and they seem valid. I haven't seen any firsthand myself, but they seem valid, where a child remembers the last thing that happened in his previous life. Like there was a child that remembered dying in a war, in a plane crash, and described where the plane crashed and everything. Mm-hmm. And then they were able to validate it. There's a plane crash of a guy, and it was exactly the spot he described, indicating that he's the same spirit that left that place and came back in.
And he knew all the names.
Reincarnation.
He knew all the names of the people.
All the names. Yeah, exactly. And so I tend not to go deeply into those and describe that he knew the names and stuff, just because like myself, I didn't believe anything that I heard from other people. And so, like Christian and I keep saying, the best thing for you to do is to go watch people's firsthand recounts, watch people talking about what happened to them. That's the way you really come to understand. You don't understand by listening to scientists conjecture on how things are working. The scientists are disconnected from this whole thing, actually. The physicians are the ones that are watching it happen and awestruck by this happening. And the people themselves describe firsthand, and it's very easy to understand when you hear it from them. But scientists are out there kind of sticking to their old theories and not really accepting any of the stories.
There are some
so reincarnation just has to be an accepted thing.
There are some scientists that are like starting to accept this and look into it, and a lot of them are actually on Gaia. I don't know if you ever heard of that platform, but Gaia, there's a lot of scientists. I have some favorite scientists on there that are talking about that, and they believe it, and they go into string theory and everything like that, and the soul coming into the body. But I had a question for Lisa, if that's all right. Because you were talking about your past life regression, and I've actually read a few books on this, and Robert Schwartz is a hypnotist who does life regression with mediums, and I'll put him up on the screen here. I've read 2 of his books, and I'm on the 3rd book, but a lot of people who undergo the past life regression are validating and saying a lot of the things that people describe in near-death experience and where we go and the choices that we make or why they chose a specific theme. If you're willing to share, is there any specific, I don't know how many times you've had that done, or is there any stories, or could you
yeah, I've had it done, about 4 times now. The first one was kind of like a bit bizarre because I'd never experienced that, so you didn't know what to expect, and I was a bit scared. But I suppose once I'd had that, and there was nothing to be scary about, once I'd done that the first time, I felt comfortable. So maybe if anyone who does do that, it's just, as you say, it's just a relaxed process, and what they kind of do is talk you for a little bit, so then you'd feel comfortable doing it. So you just talk for like a few minutes and kind of like get you to relax. So and you go into a nice place where you just feel really comfortable, a bit like meditation, really. Mm-hmm. And they say to you, like, spin the wheel. So you get like a big wheel and it's going backwards, and you start going back to your past life. And you do that for about 5 minutes. And then when you wake up, as in, I just say to you, like, stop when you feel like you're in the place where you need to be. And then they just say, like, look down at your feet and what do you see? And that kind of made me feel really comfortable then, because I thought, okay, where am I? So then this particular place, I was like, I could see my feet on the floor in this house. I was looking around. There wasn't much around. But really, I felt all the feelings, and I felt cold. I was in this house. We had no money. We had bags as clothes. And it was really weird. So when I looked around, they didn't look the same, but my mum and was it my mum? It was my mum and the sister who was my sister was actually my family who are now. Sounds bonkers. So the people who are, my family now were my family back then, but they were different. So my sister, who was in that past life, is now my dad.
Yeah.
I know that sounds bonkers.
They actually cover that, and they call it soul groups, that souls will actually come down, and it's interchangeable. Your mom could be your sister in the next life, or you can be the parent of your mom now who's in this life, and it's interchangeable. And you choose certain themes. Yeah. Even your enemy, even someone who you consider an enemy or you hate that person, could be a part of your soul group, and you kind of like come down together. We're going to explore this theme together. You're going to be against me, and I'm not going to like you very much, but it's going to help me learn this type of lesson, and so on. Yeah. In
this life, I'd gone through quite a hard, a difficult experience. I've written about it, I'm starting to write about it in my book. And but I knew we knew each other in a past life. So, when you meet people, you just kind of know, like, you already know them. And I just knew I knew him. And we kind of like had a really difficult experience in this lifetime. But I knew him before. I just knew it. And I don't know how, but I just felt it. And we'd gone through quite a tough time. But it actually, I'm so grateful because it made me grow as a person, and I learned a lot from it. And I feel he was here to do that, to help me grow as a person and learn from these experiences. So I just felt like we were both like agreed a time and date when we're going to meet in the universe, to come on this planet, and then to meet and to talk about this, to help me to grow or to be whatever the person I'm meant to be. Again, I've got no knowledge. I hadn't really read any books on it.
I can verify
just
that.
what I felt inside.
I can verify that.
I don't know about soul groups either. I don't understand that, but I have also switched roles with people in my human life, this life, where I was the boss of somebody, and then they were my boss. And this has happened to me several times, and it is kind of a similar kind of thing, actually.
Yeah,
you get to experience the relationship from both sides.
It's a very different thing, yeah. Oh, so
I got introduced to Kevin. And this is really weird.
Say that again. Sorry, you got cut off for a moment.
I said, this is really weird. When I met Kevin, we met just on a Zoom call. And if you felt like this, Kevin, and I haven't told you this, but I felt like I knew you, like as if we were meant to meet and we were meant to do something, because I'm in the UK. I didn't know Kevin. I'd never met Kevin, spoken to Kevin, and I just felt we were meant to meet to make something which we're actually growing at the moment. And I have no idea. Did you feel like that, or
I felt really comfortable. No, I felt really comfortable. Yeah,
they say
felt natural.
Yep. The spirit that I keep hearing back.
I don't know that I've known you in the past. Like I don't know that I don't have that intuition, but it feels really comfortable. I always felt really comfortable. So yeah.
They say that they're in spirit, especially when it comes through in the past life regression stuff, and Robert Schwartz doing that with all those people. When the spirit guides talk through the mediums to talk and connect to that person's soul, they say that there are no coincidences, even though it seems like there are. That when you meet certain people, it's usually intentional, whether it's a good or bad experience.
And then it's hopefully meant to be, and as you say, that intention. But yeah, I feel that for you. I feel like your life's already kind of mapped out. You might take one road that's wrong, but you'll always have people coming in your life who you're already meant to meet and come on your path.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm gradually waking up to my spirituality. I'm a programmer, and I grew up with materialist only viewpoint. And I believe for the first 38 years of my life that brain was creating consciousness and creating everything. Now I know that's not true, but it's just such a drastic change in what I was taught in school and everything. And I've never been the type of person to say, oh, I wonder if I knew this person in a past life. Never crossed my mind in the first 38 years of my life. Now I realize that that's a possibility, but I'm still opening up to that type of thing. And I recently had a couple of dreams. I had a dream where my mom said my name.
Oh, yeah.
She just said my name to me right in the middle of my sleeping. And I was in between two other dreams. It didn't make sense at all. It was like it came in at a third level of communication. It was so real and so direct. She said my name, Kevin. Kind of neutral, but it felt like kind of a call or something. And anyway, the next morning I called her, and she had actually gotten sick right around the same time. I don't know if it was the exact same time, but she got sick that night when I was dreaming and heard her call my name. She was sick, and then I'm having you or Christian, but she actually is. There's something wrong. She has to go to the doctor now.
That's what I told you. I said, pay attention to that.
I wanted to tell you that, Christian. Yeah, because you were telling me about that, and that it could be significant. And I took it as it could be significant that I heard her name. So when she told me on the phone, I think I need to go get checked out, Kevin. There's something going wrong. I told her, I think you should too.
Yeah, that's what I told him.
Yeah.
As soon as he told me, I was like, tell her to go get a checkup, because there, again, no coincidences.
Absolutely.
You're actually right. And then the other dream that I had was my cat visited me. Okay, I just love this story. And this happened recently, and it was an affirmation for me. I asked for a sign. I've been researching near-death experiences for so long. I know it to be true intellectually. I figured it out, reasonably and logically. I figured out that there is a spiritual world out there, and that we go to it, and that I think that I'm actually not. I wasn't created here on Earth. My soul came into Earth. I believe that now.
I feel the same.
Yeah. So in that sense, I believe we're all aliens. We're all from a different realm, and we were on Earth right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I come to realize all this, but I just wanted a sign. I was asking for a sign. It's like, just show me something. And that night or the next day when I was dreaming, I kind of got into a weird state. It reminds me of what Christian describes with sleep paralysis. I did enter a sort of sleep paralysis because he's had that in his life. I entered a sleep paralysis state where I couldn't move, but my eyes were shut, but I could see clearly, and I could see my bed, and I saw my cat, my beloved cat, Lilo, that I've loved for 15 years. I've had her since birth, all the way to when I had to put her down from old age. She couldn't walk anymore. But I loved her. And I asked for a visitation, and I thought it was going to be like a relative, my family, my mom or my dad. And because my dad actually passed away a year ago, and I thought like he would come and say something to me, but my cat came, and I felt my cat's energy so clearly. It was so clear. I felt her love coming in, and I felt and she was just so happy. She was just like she would be getting ready to purr, and she was just there, and she was just saying hi. She was just making her presence known, and I felt her love, and there's nothing she had to discuss. and I started to get shocked. I realized that this was like a lucid dream. I realized I didn't think I was dreaming. I realized I was Kevin and everything, and I was shocked by it. So I looked away, and then I looked back, thinking this can't be real. She's going to be gone. When I look away and I looked back, and she was still there. And this vision kept persisting, and I couldn't open my eyes. I was thinking, I got to try to open my eyes so I can see if she's really there. I couldn't open my eyes. I was in this like sleep paralysis, and she was there, and I felt the warmth, and she just like kept burning her presence into me. And then I don't know how long, but a few seconds after that, it sort of faded out, and I faded into some other blackness for a while, like you do when you're dreaming. And then there's some dreams that started that were unrelated. But that was so different. It wasn't a dream, and it wasn't awake either because my eyes weren't open. But it was so real. It felt so real. It felt a lot like what they say in the NDEs when they know who it is. Like I knew for sure it was Lilo. Yeah. It's just obvious. My cat. And then after I thought about it, and I thought it actually makes sense that I got visited by my cat instead of some other people, because it's been my real true companion for the last 15 years through some of the stuff I went through. So that was I had one visitation from a cat.
That's amazing. And they come back. So I've got a little story to tell you as well. And I don't know if you're able to show these images. I'll send them over to you.
I'll put them up.
So, oh, brilliant. So my dog passed away in December, just gone. And I loved her to bits. She was 5 years old. And she's like my best friend, cuddling her. She's just with me. You can't even go to the toilet on your own. She's with me 24/7. And we just had such a bond, but I just felt she was always here to help me. And even if if you had a bad day or you're crying, she just knew she'd come over and like just give you love. Like she just really, I swear she was like a spiritual dog. Anyway, so when she passed in December, I was like heartbroken. I didn't even sort of like come out of my room for 5 days. I was so upset. And 7 months later, so this was about 2 years ago, roughly, I just was walking up the woods. So I normally like walk around the fields and the woods. And I said, oh, Holly, that was her name. I said, show me a sign or like, let me know you're okay. And I think it was over 2, maybe 3 days later, like, you forget about it. I was in my lounge, and bearing in mind, my lounge, I haven't had anybody in for weeks. It hasn't been decorated for a couple of years. An image, I swear to God, I was still in shock now. An image came up on my wall. It was there. I just sort of saw it. It was. It's like a shadows of like my dog, the picture, and I will show you on there, and I'm going to send it for you on email. And it literally is a spitting image of my dog. and it just appeared from nowhere on my wall, and it's sort of like about this big. So I can't wait to show you, and it's blown me away, and it's still there, the image, and the walls, no one's touched it. I just don't know.
I actually have a video. I don't know if I sent it to you, Kevin, but my uncle had left his night vision camera on overnight on his table on a desk. And in the recording, he actually captures like a full-blown, doesn't look like dust. It comes from like a back room, orb just comes and it goes right past the camera. And, you know, usually dust doesn't move like that too. You'll see the video. I'll share it with both of you, but it's very interesting. So it's just, yeah, that things like that happen.
You know, you think, well, how can I be? I was touching it and feeling around it. You know, you think, like, you question everything. You think, no, that can't be real. But I thought, well, it has to be. And I asked my son, I said, have you touched that? He's like, well, what are you on about, Mum? And then I showed him. He was like, you know, he just couldn't believe it. So, yeah, I think every time I've asked, and it hasn't happened straight away, I've asked for a sign or just show me or guide me. Sometimes it has, but normally it's like something 3, 4, 5 days later, I've had something or received something or a message. It's just incredible.
You have, to my knowledge, everyone has at least one guide. Sometimes they can have 2, but that number can grow and grow. You don't have to have just 2 or 1. And they listen to you. They can validate. Sometimes the deceased loved one can become your guide, and they watch over you, and they make sure certain things happen. There's a whole thing on this, Kevin. I got to tell you about it. But I already told Kevin prior to living in this loft that I'm living in right now, I was living with some roommates. I didn't want to be there. I was just kind of having I just wanted to be on my own again. And I was starting to get fed up with it. And I was just like, God, universe, anyone listening, just give me a sign. Like, should I leave? Should I go? I still had another half a year to stay there. I couldn't break the lease. And the very next day after work, there was a fire. And the neighbors had started a fire. I had to grab my cat, put him in his bag, and run out. I even had to drag someone down the stairs, help drag someone down the stairs because he couldn't breathe. It was this whole thing. And fortunately, nobody got hurt, nobody died, but only my room got destroyed. And it was kind of like a bubble because all the important stuff didn't get damaged, like my TV and things like that didn't get damaged. And I was like, all right, so that's good. But yeah, I was happy. Everyone was freaking out. And I was just like, well, even if I lose everything, I'm totally okay because I asked for a sign and they gave it to me. So it was totally cool. Everything ended up working out. And I got to break the lease. I got to leave right away. And that happens. And just to kind of talk about really briefly is just the contact. I could never control whenever I connected with someone who had crossed over. Usually it was in dreams at first. And I actually had a being who didn't necessarily look human, but she, bigger eyes, and she came to me and she said, we have the ability to communicate in dreams, and it's easier to communicate this way sometimes. And that's what she said. And I was like, oh, okay. And I started to practice meditation. And when I started doing that, I actually started more consciously receiving information. My mom's mother came through, and you start to go through kind of like what Lisa said, am I making this up, or what's going on? And I just asked her, I was like, Grandma, if this is really happening, give me something that my mom would know or somebody would know that I could validate, just so for me, please. So she started, for me, it's visual. And the communication is very, it's not black and white like we're talking, to each other here. It's very kind of like a sense, a knowing, a feeling, because she's not speaking words, but I see her in my mind's eye. I just know what she means. It's telepathic, I guess. I don't know. And she started doing this. She started scratching her nose. And by her just doing this, I knew she was talking about my mother. And she's like, you're making my mom's nose itch. And she's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense, but I'll bring that up to her. And then another thing she gave me was a pearl. She put a pearl, and I was like, she's like, ask my mom about pearls. I was like, and she's like, yes. So after the experience, I went to my mom. I'm like, hey, Mom, I know this is weird, before I tell you anything, has your nose been itchy lately? And she's like, yeah, it's been really itchy lately. And I'm like, okay. And then I just opened up. I'm like, yeah, your mom came through to me and she told me that she's making your nose itch. And she's like, really? Anything else? And I was like, yeah, I know this is out there. I know this doesn't make a lot of sense, but have you been dealing with pearls lately or anything related to pearls? Does that ring any bells? And she said, yes. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, your sister's birthday is coming up and we're making it like mermaid themed. So we got a bunch of pearls to decorate everything. And I was like, well, she's aware of it. And the last thing I'll say is that, again, meditation, my grandfather, my mom's father, came through and he was sharing information. I didn't really get to know him very well in life. And same thing, he started giving me validation. I was like, please just give me validation. He showed me like this little wooden box and he just kept stressing that it was important. The other thing that he told me was that, again, not through words, just this weird knowing understanding that a woman in our family is going to pass soon. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And I was like, is she close to me or anyone I know? And he's like, no, she's not. And I'm like, okay. And and another thing he gave me was a fishing hook. And I was like, okay, I'll ask. And I started asking the family. Apparently he was a big fisher. He loved to fish. And the little box thing took me some time to find out about, but my aunt was like, he actually used to craft little wooden boxes by hand. I didn't know that. And I was like, I guess the only thing that we need to validate was the death, I guess. And hopefully nothing happens. But I did tell people. I told my mother, I told my uncle, I told some other family members. 2 weeks later, my grandfather's sister passed away. And they were like, oh my God, Chris called it. And then they called me to tell me. I had forgotten about it. And they called to tell me. And it gave me chills, like shivers. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting validation here. So there has to be something real.
Few things I want to say about that, and one of them is to bring people back and get them grounded, because I know stories like this can, we are personally validated ourselves by these things, and I don't doubt it. But other people are like, yeah, sure, that happened. But I just wanted to say two things. One is it comes to mind the phrase, "Be careful what you wish for," for your fire, for your fire and wanting. Because my sensei told me that, my karate instructor. He said once a long time ago that the law of attraction is real. The secret is real. And he said he practiced it. And one time he asked for a car. He really wanted a new car. So he just kept visualizing he already had the car and driving it and stuff and the pleasure. And then he got into a car accident with his old car, and totaled it. So and then that opened up the pathway for him to buy the new car that suddenly came into his life. But
just may not be in the way you expect.
Anyway, wish for. It's like, I want to move, and then boom, fire destroys your whole. But it was a good thing, right?
Yeah.
In the long run.
It's better to just. It's better to let go of your expectations and just be open to what comes in.
So the second thing I really want to say is just to get people back on board. I wanted to say that these personal validations are, to me, seem very real. That they really do happen. I've had a couple of them, not that strong as these stories, but the personal validations do happen. And one more thing, near-death experiencers, when they come back, there often are physical things that are miracles that occur in this physical world right afterwards.
Right.
That rapid recoveries that the physicians themselves, and I've heard it from dozens, reporting that there's no way that person could be back on their feet and living again. They were like paralyzed or something, or half their brain was dead. And they've made a rapid recovery that seemed impossible. This has happened countless times. And if you really look into near-death experiences, you'll see that the physical world can be bent or modified. It can be changed faster than you think it can be changed from the spiritual world. And I've always known that spiritual, physical, and mental are connected, and there's that three-way pyramid or something that somebody made a long time ago. But even in my 38 years of living before I discovered near-death experience, I still knew that there's a spiritual kind of interacting with physical. And I always believe that if you set your mind on something, your body will become healthier and everything will physically will adapt to your new goal. And so I always told people, in order to be healthy, get a purpose, attach to a purpose, and love that purpose and go after it. And then your body will become healthy, from the intention. So I always believe that leading with spirit could be so powerful. And I always kind of thought like you could lead physically or you could lead with your spirit, that they're just kind of tied together. I think that's true. What I'm telling you now is, now that I've looked into near-death experiences, I'm telling you that the spirit is much more powerful than I actually ever thought. That when you decide to continue living, as people will have to decide in their near-death experience, when they decide to continue living, sometimes their body is
Miraculous
desecrated.
recovery. Yeah.
They've been underwater. They're completely filled with water or something, or they've been run over. I remember a story of a guy that got run over, some guy on his bike got run over by somebody that was on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
And he got run over several times, and she stayed on her phone and kept running over him. And his body was in such bad shape. It was either he or she. His body was in such bad shape, but he decided to continue living in his near-death experience review, and he came back, and it was excruciating pain when he came back. But he all of his, I don't know if he had broken arms or what, but all of his stuff just sort of started miraculously getting back into alignment and healing. And you'll hear the details in the stories that you read. So I just wanted to tell you that it's not made up, that physical world can suddenly change in a crazy way. It might seem outside of the law of physics, right?
Yeah.
It probably does. And maybe it is outside the law of physics. Maybe. But whatever it is, it adapts quickly, is what I'm saying.
They actually have a case, I believe it's the case of Anita Morjani, where she had lymphoma and she had tumors all over her body. And it was the message she was given by the doctors, and you're, you have this amount of time to live. I'm sorry. This is what's going to start happening as your body starts to shut down. And in her near-death experience, she had a light being come to her and tell her, you have to go back. You're not finished yet. And she's like, how am I going to go back? My body's like destroyed. There's no way I can go back. And the being had replied, and I believe it's this case, the being had replied that all illnesses start off energetically first. If you can fix the energy, your body will heal, and it will, to doctors, it'll be a miracle. And it was such a miracle to them, and they couldn't explain it. They tested her multiple times after that to see what happened to the tumors, because they completely disappeared. And they were like, oh, I guess it was a misdiagnosis, is what they start to go with, because it doesn't fall into the realm of their belief system. But there are many, many cases like that, miraculous recoveries where they shouldn't have come back, and they do.
Yeah, and I have to say that long before I learned about NDEs growing up, I discovered that mental should come first. And I lost a lot of weight when I was a kid. When I was 15 years old, I was 210 pounds, and I had a round face, and I was a foot shorter than I am now. I looked like a Piper boy. Like I was really big when I was a kid. And at 15 years old, I hit rock bottom and broke down after school one day, and hit the rock bottom point in my life and decided to change everything. And ever since that day, I've been trying to improve myself in every way. But one of those is losing weight, and I lost 50 pounds over summer, which is 3 months. I lost 50 pounds. And the way I did it, and I knew at the time, I was only 15, but I knew that it had to be intention in the mind and changing the way I feel and my belief about myself. And so I started hanging out with a lot of kids that were really active. And we're just the kind of kids that would just grab me and run out. We're going to go take a car ride through the mountains real quick, and a dangerous car ride in the mountains, in their sports cars. But I started hanging out with these active people, and then it was my mindset that changed, and then I lost weight. But after that point, I started developing the idea that cancer and other forms of illness can be just avoided, or they can be cleared up by a different mental way of thinking. But again, you can't say it's like 100%, because there's some people that are affected by it, and I don't know exactly the real reasons behind it. But I always believed, is what I'm trying to say. I always believed inside that I could avoid cancer, that I could avoid car crashes. Even though, like we were saying in the last podcast, even though there's statistics out there that say 1 in 1,000 chance you'll get in a car wreck. And so if you drive 1,000 times, you're bound to get in a car wreck, right? That's not right at all. Statistics are baloney, for one thing. Two, your intention in your mind and your spirit is what dictates whether you get into accidents or not. And that's something I think people need to accept personal responsibility for their own spiritual essence
and their thoughts.
Stop pretending like you're not a spiritual essence and that you're just a victim of your body and statistics. That you've got to get into a car accident because statistics say that. And yeah, you're not a victim of your body. If you have cancer, you're not a victim of your cancer. That you're tied with it. At very least, understand that you're tied with it. That your spiritual feeling and what you're doing with your life and all that stuff affects it, directly. And so I've always known intuitively that I could avoid, death. Like I was saying in the beginning, if you have an intention, you just automatically become healthy. And I've held on to purposes and intentions ever since age 15 when I hit rock bottom. And I honestly, it's worked because I eat fast food all the time. I sit in front of a computer and type all the time. I should be like overweight and I should be unhealthy. And I tell you, it is, my life has formed into what it is, and I've stayed in good shape and I've stayed with good energy. And it's all been from the spiritual, mental side of just having a purpose and believing in it. And I don't have to watch what I eat or anything. And I just kind of work out when I need to. I still get inclinations that I have to work out because my body feels, my muscles hurt and stuff. But nothing like those people that say they have to go to the gym, 3 times a week, and I have to do an hour and I have to lift 150 pounds. Like, God, that sounds like an incredibly lot of work. Like, I just need 10 minutes every week or something to just do some things, and then I feel great.
I have to go in a lot to keep fit and lose weight. But as you say, it is your mentally and, as you say, spiritually. I think, yeah, as you say, if you feel like you're mentally fit and you're healthy, and as you say, and if you look after yourself, we're just a vessel, really, aren't we? That's all we are. And as you say, if you look after yourself, but as you say, most of it is like mentally, spiritually, looking after your wellness and health.
Yeah, and therefore, I also, just to extend my theory just a bit further, this one may be sensitive to a lot of people. I also believe that beautiful people are also can be in tune with their path, their life path, and things. And so I don't see beauty as superficial only. I see beauty as also tied with other things.
I agree.
And I don't know how. Yeah,
I believe that even some people who may say, because it's all perspective really, or who's beautiful, who's not beautiful. And also it's an energy thing, because you could have someone who people would say are ugly, but they're so in love with their life, they're so passionate, they don't really care, and their energy becomes very attractive to others, even people who would be considered more beautiful than them, and then they get attracted to that person. And everything, if we want to go more scientific, everything is made up of energy. We know through the law of conservation that energy can't be created or destroyed. It only changes forms. And
I'm not with you.
Sorry?
I'm not with you on that one. You haven't convinced me.
On which one?
That's the long-standing theory. Energy can't be created or destroyed. I'm not going to believe that.
Well,
not yet.
We also have to remember, because if the soul goes on and you're made up of energy, you can't be created or destroyed. That's how you can come back. But anyway, you just change forms, because when you leave the physical body, now you're in spirit. You just change form into a spirit form, and then you come back into the human form. It's like a cycling. We know if we melt ice, it's not actually gone. It turns to water. And then when that actually evaporates, it's still not gone. It's more in a gas state now. It's just changing forms all the time. And we know that life is cyclic that way. But everything is energy and vibration, and we're all vibrating at certain frequencies. I also want to bring up, because Lisa mentioned this, about energy and vibration. They actually have Dr. Sandra Rose, who developed the EE system, the energy enhancement system, which is a device They even have, apparently Tony Robbins bought a bunch of these devices too, because they know it works, that emits frequencies and energy through scalar wave technology, that people go into these rooms and it helps repair the DNA. It helps people go in there with all kinds of things. There was a woman who had a 12.5 meter cyst that was causing her pain, and she was told she had to get surgery to remove it. She went into one of these rooms for 4 hours, came out, the pain was gone. She didn't have that. And if you guys watch Thrive 2, which I highly recommend, they show all the other technologies they don't really bring to the forefront. They don't talk about very much on the media.
Yeah, binaural beats, which plays little binaural beats, which plays little frequencies into your ear that helps you meditate. Supposedly, it hasn't worked for me yet. But,
there's different forms of meditation.
A sound bath. So I go to those regularly. So it's a really high vibrational music, but it's like done with like sort of bowls,
singing bowls. Yeah.
Yeah, singing bowls. They are incredible.
They're awesome.
They're awesome, and they use it kind of like you feel like you. I didn't know it. I went for the first time. Yeah, you feel like you're just like literally renewing and like having a cleanse. I loved it.
It's different in person too. Like if anyone hasn't experienced that, I recommend that in person, because it's like you can feel it like vibrating through you, like, and
literally your body. Yeah, it's as if you're like your vibration is like literally moving. And I've done it on YouTube, and it's just not the same. But being there in person, your whole body, it was like my body was going like this. It was incredible.
In Thrive 2, they actually have doctors and researchers that are actually understanding that we're all made up of energy and vibration. So they develop these technologies to actually help heal people with, it doesn't really matter what you have. There's one doctor who was curing cancer, and he was thrown in prison, and they were calling him a fraud, even though what he was doing was working. And there's this one place where they understand that everyone has their own unique frequency, like a fingerprint. And if you can match that frequency and emit that frequency towards the person, it can help facilitate healing and heal the body, which is very interesting. And you know, most medical doctors don't know about energy, vibration, and things like that, because they don't teach that to them in school. It's something that you kind of have to do like external research for, but it's starting to come up more and more, and I think it's very important.
Hey, Lisa, I know that time is coming. This is coming up
a little nod out there. Yeah, I've got to go in a minute. Yeah.
I did want to make an overall statement about my own personal growth as a result of NDEs. But are you going to be, do you have to head out?
Yes, you probably saw I was just getting the nod, right? I thought, you know, it was so fascinating talking to you both, as you say. I know me and Kevin have spoken about it, but I've never spoken to you, Christian, and I feel like we kind of both some of the things, you know, you've talked about as well, and with Kevin, you know, like I feel, I don't know, it's really weird, like we've both kind of like gone through the same things, but you've done a lot of research. I've done nada. I've not done any research. It's just through what I've experienced myself and learned. And I just find it incredible listening to both your stories as well. What you've
been doing research because I need to be convinced. You know, that's probably why.
I did when I was younger, but I think having these validations, like my nan passing, you know, the school bus breaking down, the feather, that was my validation. But I have asked a few times, and every time I've got my validation. So that's what I needed for myself. But as you say, a lot of people think I'm batshit crazy, you know, because they just, you know, unless they've had experience or, you know, or watched videos, as you say, like the NDAs, then they believe you. So it's to talk to somebody and other people who have maybe watched or experienced it, because you kind of feel alone. I have done a lot, and it's when Kevin were talking, I was like, somebody else understands me and like who wants to talk about it.
More people are waking up. They're starting to get this information. Yeah.
So glad you came, Lisa.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And what I just wanted to say to you while you're here and to everybody is that and I want everybody else to know too, that I've gone through such a major transformation in the last year, just learning about near-death experiences. And it's made me so much, it's made my life so much better. And I wanted to say two things. Number one, I'm a very logical programmer. I've been that way. I've been a programmer for 14 years, an iPhone programmer, and I programmed AIMM, myself, and I'm very logical and very reasonable. And I've come to these conclusions through logic and reasoning by looking at everything that's out there, all the stories and all the evidence and things. And myself, I've had a few spiritual experiences that point me in that direction and show me that it's the real thing. And I just wanted to say that once you discover that it's the real thing, then you know that it's the truth that you're getting. That I wanted everybody to be clear. I'm not saying all this, and I don't think Kristen's saying all this. I don't think Lisa is either. We're not saying this so that you can feel better, even though it's not true. I believe with certainty that this is true, that the brain does not create consciousness, that our spirits live outside of the brain and they come into earth and they go through the body. This is evident in all the people's descriptions of their experiences once they die. And so come to the truth, and the truth is there, and you can just figure it out yourself. But once you come to the truth, your life gets so much better. You live from a place of love first.
Yes.
And so for me personally, I've transformed to being to looking for opportunities to love people and myself. I always was pretty good at loving myself, but I'm trying to get even better at that, and also sharing that love with other people, and realizing that sharing the love with other people and loving other things and people and animals too is really important. No matter what you're doing, you can be a hired assassin, and live in the shadow world or whatever you do. You should still look for opportunities to love people, as much as you can. Love yourself, love people, give yourself love, send the love waves into your own self, and then send love waves to other people. And looking into NDEs will take you to that realization that you just need to look for more opportunities to love. And once I've started doing that, my life has changed so much. Not even just externally. I know it's changed externally. I know people would rather be around me if I'm that way. Obviously, if I'm loving them, they'd rather be around me. But internally, it's changed so much. I no longer have a limit on my happiness at any moment. I can increase my scale to nearly 100% happiness in any moment, even if I have external factors bearing down on me, like low bank accounts or something, lack of money or something. And it's so painful or whatever. I can still get into this place of, number one, knowing how beautiful the experience is once you die, and the transition that happens, and the whole process. Knowing what's waiting is really great news for all of humanity, because it's not. You don't go to a hell if you're bad. Basically everybody goes to this heaven place, which we talked about before. And a lot of people consider Earth the hell in relationship to that heaven. So you've got great things waiting in the NDE world when you make that transition. So that's great news. You can feel good. You cannot be afraid of dying. And then secondly, everybody that does NDE says that love is the most important. So you can start putting love first. And once I've done that, now I can suddenly feel all this love at any moment, and I can feel happy at any moment. And I just have this bigger. It's expanded my ability to feel content. My feeling content is just suddenly massive. Like if I'm in the middle of a tricky situation that's stressful normally, and I would, in the past, I'd become really insecure and wonder if I'm living my life the right way, if I've made some bad decisions, that I now have this extra place that I'm just in, that of knowing my spiritual essence of where I came from and what's going to happen after and all this stuff in between. And I know to go back to finding love. And I also know that don't be hard on yourself. All near-death experiences say that. Don't be hard on yourself, and don't be hard on other people. That this is really hard. That even the people that are greedy out there from all this horrible late-stage capitalism that's going on, the greedy people, even them, you have to forgive and love them, and not while they're doing the bad things. You got to get the bad things out, but everybody needs to be loved and accepted. And that near-death experience just kind of like reveals that. And so it's a profoundly good change to go through, to just research those things. And I just wanted to comment on the power that it gives you in your life. And I'm a whole new person, not limited. I don't care about getting a big mansion just to soak in that feeling of just having more than somebody else. I don't actually want that much anymore. I still want nice mansion and big things and all the things, and I'm still after power too. And I think everybody is after power. And even if you learn about near-death experiences, that doesn't go away. But you have the love first mentality, and it's just, and you have a grounded feeling. So I just wanted to share it. Yeah,
I agree. And thanks for joining us.
Hey, Christian, we can continue for a second. Do you want to just talk after this?
Yeah.
For a moment? Decide what we want to do?
Yeah, once you leave, that's fine.
Okay. Well, Lisa, any last words?
No, just so we can email and talk. But no, I really enjoyed it, guys. It's nice to speak to like-minded people and feel comfortable talking about your experience and be open, really. As you say, 'cause it's very difficult. Sometimes you don't have people to talk to, and yeah, you could just be yourself and tell your experience. As I said, I haven't really done any research. It's just been my own experience and the way I feel, and my body tells me, yes, this is right. So it's nice to hear your stories and hear your research. I feel like I need to do lots of research really to find out more, because I don't know enough, but I just know what I know inside.
It's spot on, though.
Maybe that's enough.
Yeah, it's spot on.
Watching near-death experiences, I think, is really enjoyable because it shows you what's coming, and it's insightful and it's also positive. You just are happy.
Positive, and we're here. I feel we're here to make. I know for me personally, I'm here to make a change to this planet and bring something to this planet. I know that sounds bonkers, but I know I'm here for peace and love and to help people. That's what I've put on this planet. I knew that as a kid, and I've always known it. And
same.
I think things now in my life are about to start to change. And that's going to give a platform then to help people to, love themselves and change and be happy. So, and hopefully learn that life's not that bad. And when you do pass, it's not scary. So, yeah. So, what you guys,
don't take yourself seriously. Don't be hard on yourself. Just don't be hard on yourself. Try to love people. This is an intense adventure we're going through in the physical world. It's intense. You have you're like I said before, we're all going for power. We have this balance between greed and love, and you're kind of switching between the two, and it's a tug of war. There's something about that causes our growth and everything. But all NDEers say, once you get up there, you realize, don't be so hard on yourself. This is really hard. Just find opportunities to love people.
Well, good talking to you guys, and I hope. Well, just my little stories kind of give you something to
absolutely.
Yeah, maybe think about. And I'll send the pictures on there so you've got them. And I can't wait for you to actually see them. Well, maybe you can discuss that after once you get them. Cool. And have a look, see what you think. But no, really good talking to you guys, and take care, and we'll hopefully speak soon.
All right, talk to you soon. Take care.
Nice to meet you, Christian.
Nice to meet you. And I just wanted to say that, I agree with you, Kevin, and it's all about love, and that's the central message that people with near-death experiences come back with, is about loving. And one particular person had a near-death experience and asked God, source, whatever you wish to call it, what am I supposed to do? And to which the being responded, love who you're with. And he's like, how is that going to change the world? He said, love who you're with so that they can love who they're with, and they can love, and that person can love who they're with. And then it's like a domino effect, and it starts happening, like spreading all over the place, which is happening now. And these messages are getting out there, and people are waking up. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I know I'm sorry. We have the lag thing. I want to talk to you about that because I know it's true, and I'm trying to get to that place where I can just love more. But there is some challenge to that.
Yeah, loving unconditionally.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Yeah, because I guess I grew up not loving people automatically. I think deep down, I love people, but I can also get into that spot where I'm just like, oh, this person is just there, and I want to get on to doing my own things for myself, and like ignore that they're such a beautiful person and all that. And then also, like, can you give too much love? Like, is that a thing? You love everybody. Like,
there's apparently a good balance, because in the book Presence, Kindness, and Freedom, the being talking through the channel says that there is a balance for loving someone, because just because you unconditionally love them, let's say they're, from the general perspective, a very horrible person, and they're mean, they're cold, they don't treat others with fairness. That doesn't, just because I unconditionally love you doesn't mean you have to eat at my table. Doesn't mean that I have to condone what you're doing. Loving you unconditionally can mean I forgive you. I see that you're going through this challenging time of love and acceptance, and you don't know how to love others, and maybe you don't even love yourself, but I'm going to have to let you go. And that's a form of love as well.
Sure, but where's the love happening? Is it underneath what they're actually doing with their real lives? Because if they're a bad person in their real life, according to general standards, then we don't love that part about them, right? Like, I'm not.
Well, love.
That when we love them, we're loving them, that they're a spirit underneath, and that they're struggling this life like we are.
Yeah, exactly. Because it doesn't mean condoning their actions. It's just, to love unconditionally means I love you anyway, even though you are doing those bad things and you're hurting other people. I love you for the sake of loving you. And even though what you're doing is wrong, I still love you. I can't condone what you're doing. I can't make you think any differently either. But that's your journey. That's something you have to figure out. And even if I have no control over it, I mean, we have the life review. That's something they're going to learn. And in the grand scheme of eternity, they have forever to figure it out anyway. So it's okay to love someone, let them go, and be a secondary concern, even though you hold them in your heart. You can't control them. You can't control people.
That's the trick to in my mind, is how to love somebody that is actually repulsive on the outside. That by all human standards, they're just repulsive. They're saturated in greed.
That's why you have the life review, and then you're then shown their life, and you're given the understanding of why they became that person and what experiences led them to that point. And then you're like, oh wow, here I was judging this person, and they were doing the best they could with what they understood. It wasn't right, but that's what they knew, and that's what they came to understand. And now I'm given this understanding in the life review to understand that. Just like the nurse who had the life review, where she didn't like a particular person, and she didn't think it was fair how she treated others, and she was shown everything from that person's life, from the beginning to present, what that person went through, and she got to see how she became that person, and she was surprised. She's like, I'm surprised this person's not a serial killer with what she went through, because it's even though she wasn't expressing herself in the most healthy way towards others, it could have been worse, and it could have been much, much worse. But at the same time, that's what she knew, and she was doing the best with what she had. And they also talk about how giving a person like that love, and giving them understanding, giving them room to express themselves, and a lot of times you can help facilitate the change in that person through that understanding. Because also you have to remember that the larger, like, everyone on the outside may view that person that way and not give that person the time of day. They might not give that person the time of day. And just
like children in school that often become shooters in US, that they're not loved.
To give you an example, very brief, because it's a long podcast a bit, but to give you an example,
is it a long podcast?
I actually don't know, because remember we cut off that first video, but brief story. Yeah, it's a good size. I know it's a good length at least. We can
talk about all the stuff you were just texting me about too, and I wanted to talk about life into afterlife, if possible, if you have time.
Yeah, we can go into it a bit. So just really quick, just to say this story really fast. And I'm going to summarize a bit. In the book, Aaron, the being that's being channeled, who no longer physically incarnates, he goes into saying that there was a particular life where he was a monk. We're talking like medieval days now. So he was a monk, and he went to stay at a manor with this gentleman because he was a traveling monk, and in those days you could probably ask to stay with certain people sometimes or stay in a barn or something, but the guy of the manor said, no, it's okay, I have a room here, you can stay with me. And he ended up bringing him to a room, locking him in the room, and there were dead bodies in there, and the guy wasn't going to let him out. So long story short, he started to freak out, panic. He's like, why would God condemn me? Like, he started, panicking. And he decided to start meditating. And in his meditation, he was shown a button, or I forgot what it's called. It's like back in those days, there's like a key press type of, there's a word for it. I don't know what the word is. I forgot. But there was like a secret passage that he found, which led to his escape. And when he escaped, he started to think about how he wanted to condemn this guy. Like, oh, we're going to bring the guards here. We're going to like throw this guy into prison. But then he started to realize that if I did that, that wouldn't really help this person with whatever he's going through and why he's doing these acts. That wouldn't really help the situation. It would only help my ego, help me feel better about it, but it's not solving the problem. So he got an idea, a more loving idea, even though it had to do with a trick to help resolve this. He came back with a monk. He actually removed the bodies. He went back through the secret passageway, removed all the bodies, and came back with another monk. And they ended up knocking on the door. And when they opened the door, he was like super, super scared, like surprised, like, how did you get out of the room that I locked you in the tower? And he's like, oh, you let me out in the morning. I thought I heard you unlock the door and you let me out. And he's like, but thank you so much for letting me stay there. It was so comfortable. I really appreciate that. Have you never slept in that bed up there? And he was like, no. And the curiosity got the best of him. So he's like, yeah, let me show you. So he takes him up to the room, and all the bodies were gone, and it like freaked the guy out. And the guy was just like, having a weird experience, like what happened? And he's like, thank you for letting me stay here. You're a good person. And the guy replied, I'm not a good person. And he says, why do you think you're not a good person? He's like, because I did bad things. And he says, no, you're a good person, and realize that if you've done bad things, that you now realize what you've done, and that has shown you how to act in a different way. That the door to love is always open to you, and you can learn how to love, and you're not a bad person. And he decided to stay another night with the other monk, and he said, to be honest with you, he couldn't fall asleep because he wasn't sure if he was going to be locked in the room again, because he still had that fear. But he did it anyway to facilitate that healing in that person. And sure enough, he didn't lock the room. They had breakfast with the gentleman, and the guy looked like a weight had been lifted from him, even though he was killing people and like locking them in this room. And that's just a very different perspective for healing. And
I think that's actually kind of a convoluted story to convey the simple idea that love is the way to connect with somebody, to get them to change. It's not by getting mad at them or getting revenge or imparting on them, right? It's about figuring out a way to love them. In that story, it's kind of funny, and I wouldn't have handled it that way, of like tricking him to take the bodies out and not telling him about it or whatever. But even if it was me in that story, I'd have left the bodies there, and I would have found a way to love him anyway, to love the things that are good about him. And this comes back to what my sensei told me a long time ago about how to remember anybody's name. A lot of people forget people's names. He says, you got to find something that you like about them, like their hair or the way they're talking or their personality, and love it for a moment. Just love a part of them. If you love a part of them for a moment, you will remember their name. Mm-hmm. It's a really good trick. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to how you get people to change, redirect a situation that is going to a bad place, like the bodies in that story, or somebody's trying to screw you over. somebody's trying to send you on a bad path, you have to like get off of that path. But as soon as you can, find an opportunity to reconnect with them and love them for a different reason.
Yeah. And
if you do that, then suddenly that grows. It's like the pathway through any bad situation.
Yeah.
If you can find a path to love something or
the channeler, Daryl Anko, who channels Bashar, has said that it doesn't even matter if someone's intention towards you is bad. You can still convert that energy, that negative energy, into something good for you. And the circumstances don't matter. State of being matters. And he talks about that.
That's exactly right. And I got to say, in business, okay, I'm a business person, and I have to convey the image of success as well as part of my rising up and starting my startup and everything. And the image of success is exactly like what you just said, Christian, that it's an essence that you convey, and that based on how you convey that is what actually happens as a result. And so people will come at you and they'll be kind of neutral in reality, but you'll think that they're only trying to hurt you, or you'll think that they're only trying to help you. But in reality, they're going off of what you're projecting, what you're projecting. Right. And so if you're saying all these things that are great about it, and you're showing them the things that you love about what you're doing, they will attach on to that love that you have for what you're doing, and then they'll help you along and love. Yeah. And so it's almost all about you, and it's perhaps hard for some people to grasp that idea because it's so overwhelming that you have so much responsibility for how everything unfolds in your life. But it's not, and you are the creator. You're actually the God force. You're creating things. You're a very powerful soul, more powerful than this society has led everybody to believe. Yep. In the past 50 years, at least in the U.S.
We're all we're all creator beings, and we're all part of the same source, each having our own experience. And I guess you could say, like, God's source experiencing itself as Kevin, or experiencing itself as Lisa or Christian or Sally or whoever. And we do that, for learning, for our own soul growth.
Yeah, exactly. And my message was like, I'm trying to impart is you control your own destiny.
Yes.
More than you're led to believe.
Yeah.
It's not just circumstances. Like, again, back to statistics. It's not because of statistics. Like, 1 out of 10 businesses fail, so yours will, or 9 out of 10 fail. More like, so yours will probably fail. It's not really true that way. Statistics isn't a good guide for the outcomes of things. That you actually, it's about all your essence, and whether you believe it, and your vision for the future, and whether you love what you're doing, love the changes that you're making. If all that stuff is there and you're loving it and it's your essence, then you succeed. You become the 1 out of 10. But it never was about the statistics. And you're very powerful, and more powerful than you think. If some things are going wrong in your week, it's very likely your own emotional state. Think of yourself as a creator, a very powerful creator. Whatever you're just conjuring up in your mind and putting out there, like, I'm a loving person and everybody loves me, and you're just sending that out, and you're sending some other things out. It shapes how the rest of your week goes. And this can be discovered with law of attraction as well, which is the more down-to-earth concept. Doesn't require understanding spirits necessarily, right? But law of attraction is a real thing, so you can research that, or The Secret. And more powerful than you think. And even I am still trying to wake up to how powerful I really am, because I tend to play the victim card. It was very interesting. You sent me that link, Christian, and it said the victim vibration is the worst vibration to be in. And I thought about that.
Like, victim consciousness. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's the worst one. I'm often in that vibe. I put myself there when things go wrong, like something breaks in my house or something. I'm like, these damn people that make these things. I get mad at them, and I'm like, and I'm the victim of their stupid stuff that they made. I feel that way a lot, and I realized that actually is a bad vibration, because you should actually feel lucky that there's even stuff in the first place that they've even gone through the effort of making the stuff originally, that you're alive, that it's all, even though stuff breaks a lot, but it's all kind of working, and you have an opportunity to even have that stuff. You need to be in a grateful position, that if you are feeling like a victim, you are lacking gratefulness for all the things that you have.
Yeah.
That moment, right?
Well, the thing is, because you have to remember, some people talk about this as if it's woo-woo, law of attraction, what's that? And to explain this better for, people scientifically, everything is made up of vibration. A particular vibration attracts vibrations that are likened to it. So it's another way to say that is that which is likened to itself is drawn. So if you are in victim consciousness mindset, oh, I'm the victim, this happened to me. It's like, yes, you went through an experience. Yes, you didn't enjoy it. But if you stay in that mindset, that belief system, that pain, you will attract more things into your life that make you feel the same things in the same fashion, because, oh, my cat is on my lap. But because that's what you're putting out. And that's one of the universal laws. And I'll say very briefly, and I really like these because Bashar says them, is there's only 5 laws in existence. And he says, the first law is you exist, you always have, and you always will. You are eternal. Universal law number 2, everything is here and now, or every moment in existence is happening right now. The past, the present, the future. And that goes into what near-death experiences talk about, everything happening all at once. Universal law number 3, the one is the all, and the all are the one. We're all a part of each other, and we have to learn how to love one another. We're all connected. Universal law number 4, what you put out is what you get back. Law of attraction. So the energy you put out is the energy you will therefore receive from the universe. So the world that we live in is a reflection. Each person having their own experience will then in turn experience their own reflections based on the energy that they're emitting. So if you're a victim, and we're not going to take anything away from you, anyone who's gone through traumatic experiences, I'm not trying to lighten saying that that's not significant. But if you stay in that mindset, if you stay in that victim mentality, in the pain, you will experience more of that. And if you go into a more passionate, more into love and gratitude mindset, you'll start to experience that back, more things to be grateful for, and so on. And the last universal law is everything changes except the first 4 laws. And what he means by that is physics, realms, and no matter what realm or world you're in, even in the spirit realm, all of those laws apply, and those first 4 laws are constant. So it doesn't matter where you are in your experience, those laws apply. So, which is very interesting.
And I've been meaning to tell you this. Those are great. I've been meaning to tell you this for a while. Long before I researched NDEs, I discovered that the golden rule is real. The how you treat people or whatever you do to other people comes around and comes back to you. I figured that out, over my life, using logic and reason, not just believing in something because I want to believe it.
Right.
I figured it out that it's a real thing. I tell the story of like a guy with his dog. This is my own story. I made it up. If a guy has a dog and then there's somebody harassing, an old man has a dog, and there's a young kid harassing the old man. He's trying to figure out where the money is or where the drugs are or whatever. He's like, old man, tell me where the money is. Tell me where it is. The old man's like, I don't know where it is. And then the young kid says, I'll shoot your dog. I'll shoot your dog if you don't tell me. I'll shoot him if you don't tell me where the money is. And the old man says, just don't shoot my dog. I don't know where the money is. And the young kid is so scared that he has to shoot the dog now because he threatened it. He's so scared, and he's like, he doesn't want to do it, and it feels wrong, but he shoots the dog anyway. He shoots the dog anyway because he has so much pressure. He has to find the money. He shoots him, and the old man is petrified. His dog's dead. The young kid that just shot the dog is also petrified at the situation. He's like, oh my God, what just happened? This is horrible. That experience is etched into his soul. He believes that that's the way life goes now. And that later in his life, when he becomes an old man and he has a dog or any companion in a similar fashion, that somebody will come up to him and he'll have an insecurity already built in. He'll say, please don't shoot my dog. Please don't shoot my dog. And the guy will be like, I don't want to shoot your dog. I wasn't planning to shoot your dog. But now that you're giving me those vibes, okay, I'll shoot your dog if you don't tell me where it is.
Or something else could happen, and the loss can happen too. Like maybe the dog gets hit by a car, or even if nothing happens in that particular lifetime, there's the life review where he will then experience what you put out is what you get back,
Right.
and he will therefore experience that event that happened and cause that.
Or any entering the spiritual realm at all. It all is what happens in the physical world. I know everything is really actually spiritual, but for those people that haven't accepted spirituality yet or haven't gone down the path, that what goes around comes around can be explained just from simple reasoning.
And it can happen.
When you do something to somebody, you feel like that's how life goes. And then later in your life, you project that into your conversations with people.
Into your experience.
They feel your insecurity that you're going to lose your dog now because that's what happened to the other old guy. And so they will then play that game. And the person will end up shooting your dog because they feel that energy from you. So that's how what goes around comes around actually works. When you hurt somebody, you are bound. You are inclined and bound to get that same hurt back from somebody, just on a purely physical. But then when you get into NDE, as you're saying, then it's even more obvious.
Yeah, because so it happens in other ways too. So it's like if you're fearful that someone's going to break into your car, you're putting out the energy, someone's going to break into my car, and the universe is like, okay, someone's going to break into your car, and that's the energy you put back because it's a reflection. It's like looking in a mirror. And my favorite analogy is that Bashar says that if you look in a mirror, you can't force the reflection to smile. You have to smile first. So if you're experiencing and you're seeing a frown in the reflection, and that's how you walk about daily life with that frown all the time and that hurt and that pain or whatever it is that you're experiencing, you will attract and validate that in your experience until you decide to smile first. And then you start to change how you believe things to work. You start acting on your passions, you start changing that energy, shifting it into something else, then you'll start experiencing that, having more gratitude. You'll start having more things to be grateful for. More things come. It's always a reflection because, again, we're creator beings and we're all individually creating our own experiences.
And that law that you stated earlier, I forget it was law number 3 or whichever number it was, where it indicates we are creators rather than being given our lives. We are, in a way, being given our lives too. It is kind of both. But we're creators in the sense that whatever energy we decide to stay with and keep generating and keep generating that energy. Whatever energy you do, whether you're a victim or whether you're successful or whatever, the energy you decide to stay with, that you stick with and that you nurture and all that starts to everything starts to give you that stuff that matches that energy. And so you're in a way creating your life by what kind of energy you're holding in your own mind. So it seems to me like that's a simple 1-2 step for most people to get a hold of their lives, right? Just like start. But it's there's a lot of challenges. Like if something bad happens to you, even though you're in a good energy place, you're trying to feel like you're happy and everything is great, but still a tragedy occurs and you lose a loved one or something.
Right.
Those, I think, are very challenging moments. And I think perhaps it's part of the growth that we're supposed to go through, perhaps, because it's not easy to figure out, if you're supposed to ignore the fact that a tragedy just occurred and stay in this positive energy. That seems a little weird. There's a lot of people out there that are constantly happy. It's too fake. It's a
different perspective too, because you have to understand, like when I lost my grandmother, everyone else around me was extremely sad. They didn't know how to process it. They were crying, grieving, and that's normal. But I didn't grieve that way. I was completely fine, and I understood from my own personal experiences that everything was okay. I had to leave the room because I thought that if I stayed, they would judge me, and they were like, "Why is he not crying like the rest of us?" And that actually ended up happening. I had an experience, and it's resolved now. But my dad was temporarily offended, and he thought I didn't care about my grandmother because I didn't grieve in the same way. And I just had this, and he's aware of all this stuff now. But that's the thing, it's a mindset. Because one of the things that I personally agree with, that Bashar says, is that life and all of its circumstances, no matter what you're looking at, life has no meaning. Meaning that we give it the meaning. So any circumstance, any situation that you come across is fundamentally neutral in and of itself. We decide to give it the meaning. And a lot of people, you and me, and I know this to be true because you and me could see the same circumstance. We could see someone get hit by a car and die, and both come up with our own meanings for that situation. Whereas you or whoever else is watching is extremely sad, and they're like, oh, this is horrible. How could this happen? And that mindset. And or I could be like, oh, okay, yeah, that is sad that the person died in such a traumatic way. But again, I know as a soul, he's moving on to other things. He's not actually destroyed. He's just changed. He's in the spirit form. He's doing other things. That way I know it's not sad. I know he's okay. The soul isn't annihilated. We can have two different understandings and yet have our own experiences.
And in that respect, those two people's worlds are different.
Exactly.
Fundamentally.
Exactly. They're in their own reality.
Differently. They're in their own reality for sure. We don't know whether, they're in a parallel universe living out a different reality or whether we're all in the same one. I don't know about the parallel universes thing, but I still know that in their own mind, they are living in a different world. If they react differently, if they have if they don't produce courage and another person produces courage in the same situation, their worlds are totally different after that.
You have to look up string theory, because the research they're finding for string theory is profound. It's slowly starting to prove the multiple reality theory. Just like near-death experiences are slowly starting to prove that we don't actually die. And that life goes on. I want to start bringing you into that eventually. But just to bring up, because I do have someone coming over soon.
Okay.
You wanted to go over Life to Afterlife, that movie that I put you on to.
Yeah, documentary.
Documentary, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, it's so good. And it's so good. Like it's really absorbing into at a fundamental level. And so I don't know how many exact facts I can remember, but let's talk about the things.
You finished it?
Like
or you saw like
no,
most
I'm
of it?
about 80% now.
Okay.
80%. But one thing was the golden rule thing, and I've already brought that up. I've always believed that. And she said, you recognize the golden rule is real. She was one of the mediums.
Right.
And I was like, yes, that is a real thing. And then the other thing was like, there's like two opinions, I think, in that documentary, that Earth is hell. Earth could be the hell.
Oh yeah, more dead-like state. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a more dead-like state than the NDE realm, the near-death experience realm. Earth is the hell compared to the NDE realm. And to me, that's the conclusion I started to come to also. And it was so nice to see in that documentary that two other scientists have also come to that conclusion.
Well, they're mediums. Yeah. The host of the movie is also a medium as well. He has his own YouTube channel that he does some like spirit box sessions, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and so we just have to be careful for the general audience, because whenever you say the word medium, pretty much most people run for the hills still, like they used to do for near-death experiences. Yeah, they're slowly waking up, but most people don't buy the medium thing. I didn't buy it for the first 38 years of my life.
And that's okay, though, but there are a lot of people who do accept the whole medium stuff. They have, and the people who start to look into this topic, they'll start to understand, but...
Well, like any sorry to interrupt. Any profession, mediums are filled with a lot of people that aren't doing it well. I think like 80% of them or something are not doing it well.
There are people who aren't good and stuff like that. And again, do your own research. That's I want to say that. I can't stress that enough. Do your own research. But I've had my own experience to validate that for me. And there are, like famous TV shows with people being extremely accurate with skeptics, like Hollywood Medium, for example, where they're extremely accurate with the information that they get. So it's kind of like that. And the mediums, some of them I recognize, and they're very popular. And it's just interesting to see that when they're asked what happens after we die, it's so similar to describing what near-death experiencers start to describe. And it's just falling right in line. It's that common thread. And that's what's bringing more validity to mediums and the whole thing about that. And really quickly, I just wanted to say that a lot of people who actually become mediums had a near-death experience first. They didn't have a lick of psychic or any of that stuff in them to begin with. And there are cases of people having a near-death experience, and after having touched that side, they come back with something more, and they can now see spirits and auras and communicate with spirits in a certain way, which we would call mediumship, and that's what it is. But
yeah, I've seen a few first-hand recounts of that exact thing, and they often say they do it through dreams. Their dreams become
many different ways.
There's in that documentary, I think, said that they believe that dreams are mostly where our mind leaves our body, or our spirit leaves our body.
That you're astral.
Somebody that believes you're astral, meaning that your spirit is no longer inside of your head necessarily. You're out there in the spiritual world while you're dreaming. Yeah. Where that world is in another dimension that's hard to grasp, but it's not. Yeah. It's not your body.
And I know and I'm aware of many communities that like are already opening up. So I know it's also like kind of scary to talk about sometimes, because you're like, I don't want to scare people away. But there's a saying that I love, because he's like, you cannot perceive what you are not the vibration of. So even if we had all the facts and all the proof, and we talk about near-death experiences, there's still going to be people that don't resonate with any of this information, and they're going to steer off until they have their experience that brings them back to this information. So we also can't be afraid to talk about it, because there are already people who I come across in my daily life that are like, oh my God, yes, finally somebody's talking about this and I can learn more. And those are the people that are going to jump onto this like right away. And, I just started talking to somebody, a friend, and they, a new friend that I made, and they are so into this stuff, and they're like, oh my God, my parents I can't talk to them about this. And it's just a slow awakening thing that's happening, where they're like popping up like daisies everywhere, just like starting to be more aware of this information. And I wanted to know what you thought of Robert Schwartz, the writer of Your Soul's Plan, and his understanding when he's the guy with the glasses, and he was talking about what he understands, how we create communities on the other side. How he starts talking about that more in the beginning.
Live any experience you wanted to live over there. What he's talking about, you can just, if you didn't have enough parties when you were growing up as a kid, you can suddenly have all those parties. I see your cat. It's so adorable.
Oh yeah. That's Stormy. She's the kitten still. But yeah, he says it's a very conscious reality. Because you're at a much higher vibrational state of being, you're vibrating at a much higher frequency. In those realms, you draw in to yourself whatever you wish to experience. So even that porch that grandma always used to sit at, and I'm speaking like hypothetical here, like just creating a situation, but grandma used to always sit on this porch at this specific house. Even if that house was destroyed in the physical world, you could recreate that experience and be there. And John Holland talks about that in the beginning, where he's talking to a spirit that crossed over, and she's like, oh, tell my son, or tell that person that I'm still sitting on the porch and I'm still relaxing and doing this thing here, because that's what she wishes to experience.
Deep burning question that I really want to discuss with you, and that is whether we really do get to experience anything that we want once we're in the NDE world, and the implications of that are profound. It means that if you're scared that people have midlife crises, they didn't have enough sports cars, typical stereotype. that if you miss something in your life, if you miss an experience, can you just have that experience when you get out? In other words, should we be less concerned with the fact that we're not living every single experience we could? Because I often want to have multiple lives. I want to be in different places, and I imagine all these beautiful lives you could have.
Right.
And I want to try to get them all before I leave the human place. Is that perhaps not the right mentality, that you should actually think into whatever you're doing, and then you can live whatever experience you want to live?
Well, a few things. So, because I know that people have FOMO, or fear of missing out, and and I've experienced some of that myself about missing experiences. But as I understand it, the soul can, like, let's say you wanted to be a violinist but never got that chance in life, and it's too late, or you're dying, or whatever the case is. You do get the experience to do that. If your soul wishes to do that, you will. Another thing is that you have to understand that when you die, or as I understand it, when you die, the ego and certain things you cared about don't come along with you. You don't hold on to certain things as you did in the physical life. So you could still technically experience a sports car if you wish and drive around. I don't doubt it, with what I've been hearing of the type of experiences that beings create over there. But
those are all the spirits with their sports cars. There's like a group of spirits that just ride sport cars around.
But
they don't even have bodies.
You can do whatever you want if the soul wishes it. And apparently there are other souls that vibrate at a certain frequency that want to experience certain experiences. So there could be communities where people are all about music and they're doing that.
Right. Okay, so the next question based on that is, the things that we want the most in the human world, I would guess, are the same things that our spirit wants the most. That if we, like, first of all, we all want love deep down. If you really deduce it, we're all trying to get opportunities to love, to feel loved, to experience love. It seems like that's the underlying thing under everybody's goal, no matter what it is.
Right.
But the next level up of, like, what the goals are like, like being successful in your career, having a great significant other that you love so much, and loving your family, and those fundamental things. If you didn't get a chance to have a successful career, or whatever it is that you want so much, and when you go to the spirit world, I realize that some of the who you are is stripped away, and this is a scary part for people that are just learning about NDEs. Am I really my real self when I get out there? And my answer is yes, you are, because most of the NDEs I've seen, when they explain what they're thinking and feeling when they're out of their body during the NDE, it feels like it's still them. They're doing it from their own perspective. And so I feel like, I don't know how much, but maybe 70% of your essence, of all the things you feel and love, exist even after you get out of your human body.
You still have
in the next world.
Yeah, you still have, your personality. You're not Kevin anymore. You're just more of yourself. And because you're more of yourself, it's a natural thing. And you remember who you really are. And you're like, oh, Kevin was just this tiny experience that I was having just for this moment. And I'm still Kevin, but I'm also Sally, and I'm also all the other lifetimes you may have had. You encompass all of that. You're you. You become more of yourself. And
so if you're still you, then what part of you, what are the desires that you still have that you'd be able to live?
It depends on whatever you're trying to learn, or whatever lessons you're trying to learn. So, for example, also just to talk about the career thing, because as I understand it, and they talk about it in that documentary, Life to Afterlife, they talk about how you can have jobs on the other side, but they're not jobs like we would call them or experience in the physical world. And what these jobs are more tuned into what the person is as a person, like someone who loved music and encompasses those kinds of lessons. Maybe they're a teacher of some kind on the other side. Maybe you want to become a guide for other spirits and other beings. Maybe you want to do, like, cook, or like do different, all kinds of experiences. But it's not like we have on over here where we have to do something for money. We do it because it's something you're passionate as a soul. You love to do it just for the sake of doing it. It's more embodying who that being is, not because you need to do it to survive, and it's natural.
To say that most of your superficial needs of wanting money or house will fall away because you don't need the big house necessarily.
Yeah, a lot of what you think you want is not even what you necessarily need as a soul. And the soul can then see that, oh, that was just a materialistic, that was a human thing. Now I know that that's not as important, because people say in their NDEs that when they come back, especially from a life review, that the being materialistic and money and all of that stuff is like a secondary concern. It's not really important.
Yes. But it's still so sought after, and so many people want that power and money, and they want it, and so they get a sense of satisfaction when they get it.
But I also feel like that's going away too, because it's slowly going away because more and more people are having a near-death experience, becoming aware of it, and starting to see what's more important, because the people who have the near-death experiences come back less materialistic and they become more wholesome and loving beings, people. And I think the more this information gets out there, it's going to spread like wildfire, and we're going to change as a people, and our values and perspectives are going to change. Because I personally believe, especially with, you were saying, with the late stage capitalism and everything, that this is unsustainable. We can't sustain this system. And look at the state of the world. To say that it works, it doesn't work. There's just, it's falling apart, and we have to start over. And I think we're getting there. Slowly but surely it's happening. And I say slowly, but I think it's actually happening a lot faster now. And kind of like the 100th monkey, eventually when a certain amount of people get it, more and more people are just going to fall into it.
There's an impact that I feel that I have to make in the world. I feel like I have to move up to make that impact that I need. And it's my adventure is getting there to the place where I can make some decisions, where I can improve things, improve a lot of systems that are out there, and throw out a lot of bad systems that are out there. And that feeling of, I need to gain powerful positions in order to do all that work. And so that, what comes from of that, what goes to the afterlife from that? Am I still trying to gain positions where people will listen to me? It doesn't even make sense in the afterlife.
No.
Everybody's listening all the time, right?
Yeah.
But
you don't feel that way, as far as I understand it. You don't feel that way because there is this understanding through the beings and the presence of the all-encompassing being that's there, of peace and love, that people often describe in their NDEs as they never felt it, and it's what it's what we strive for, but can never really fully achieve in the physical realm to begin with.
So it seems that once you experience that love that we've never experienced so purely, when we get there, that the rest of the stuff doesn't matter, cars and the houses and stuff.
But it's also challenging trying to wrap it's like we try to think about it and try to conceive of it from the physical mind point of view, when that realm is a completely different realm than this one. Yet that realm is still connected to us through this realm. And we forget who we are temporarily, but more and more people are starting to remember who they are. And
mind would be our ego. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
And then our spirit mind is our...
Yeah, when people cross over, you experience ego death, that the ego doesn't come with you into that realm.
So is the ego... I've learned a lot about the ego. I was a psychology major as well, and probably a lot of that was not true, but the ego could be considered the mind that's attached to the physical world, the mind that's for the physical world.
Yes, and it's needed too for survival. But
it's an adapter to the physical world. Our language is based on objects and actions in the physical world, growing things. And
the other world is a different language. That's all.
Yeah. And so the ego and so all the things the ego wants, like the cars and the positions of power and all that is related to the physical world.
But also remember, those are things that were brought up in society, because we grew up in this world that wants that. That's what the world showed us. And that's how we started to, like, schools, you go to schools or you see people in positions of power. That's all we knew. So some people are attracted to that sort of thing. I never was, but some people are attracted to that sort of thing.
It's not even just a slight attraction. It's an obsession. Elon Musk and all the top people get put on a pedestal every day.
Yeah.
And they're constantly put in our faces as idols.
Yeah, exactly. And then some people will compare to their experience that, oh, my experience may not be as good because look at where they are. And that's also a whole nother situation where I say that that person also has to do some inner reflection about themselves to what are you doing? Are you following your passions? Are you doing what you love to do? And because I feel like when we externalize and say, oh, that person's better than me, or I want that, it's okay to look up to people for, as far as like a role model, or you want to strive to get to that place. But that's also, imagine a different society. Let's say we started over from scratch, but we didn't have all this greed and we didn't have all this corruption. Do you still think it would happen? I'm talking about a society where everyone is aware that we don't actually die, that we have this understanding that we're spiritual beings and we're eternal and we're having a physical experience. We understand that love from which we came and we're more loving beings. And we have that love and we come down and we facilitate that love in our society. We don't have this economic structure that we have as today, because a lot of people seem to think this is what I grew up with. This is how the world functions right now. So therefore, nothing else can really exist besides that. Now you're closing all doors to how any other possibility. There are many, many possibilities, many, many other systems that could happen.
That is the most important question there is. Imagine what the society could be like if we didn't have the greed and the ego, just the greed itself.
We're getting
Imagine a society where everybody is aware of near-death experiences and that we're spiritual essence. If everybody is aware of our own spiritual essence, what could society be like? That's the real question people should ask themselves, and they should envision a society like that, where our current society is putting up Elon Musk every day and Jeff Bezos, and it's a constant competition between who has the most amount of dollars.
Right.
And that is what people are centering their value and their worth around. And as Christian pointed out, it's actually kind of unhealthy to compare yourself to those people because they're so extremely high in that area. They're the highest of billions of people, and to compare yourself to them is actually kind of insane. You should be comparing yourself to wherever you are, to the next step up.
Be your own person. Your value as a human being, as a person, as a soul, isn't measured by how much you have in this world. Because guess what? When they die, they're not taking their money with them. They're not taking any of that. They're not taking their empire. They're just going with their soul and the experiences. That's all you take with you. The experiences. And
we still get bombarded every day with the top materialists and the people that have money. I
want to bring up something really quick before I have to go. A word that I learned, and it's a Hebrew word that I learned. It's called tikkun, or tikkun. Yeah, tikkun. There we go, tikkun, and it means to rectify, repair. And essentially, everyone, they have this understanding, and they talk about this apparently, I think, in the Torah, is everyone has their own tikkun when they come into this life. So what that means is, let's say you're Jeff Bezos or whoever, and you come into this life, you have all this money, all this power, you don't share any of the wealth with anyone. You're all about you, very ego-minded, ego-focused type of person. Now, that energy has to be balanced out as a soul, because remember when we were talking about in previous episodes, how the soul comes down and it will experience all sides of an issue. In the next life, you might choose, because of your tikkun and the energy you have to balance out, now you may choose to be someone who's poor and gets to experience that side of things, because you weren't as loving and as compassionate, and you're trying to grow as a soul. So now you see the other side of the story. You get to see behind the curtain of what it was like, what you didn't get to experience. Because I'm sure many of us, if past lives are real and all of that exists, we could have been kings and queens And now we're experiencing a different side of that, you know, to grow as a soul and an individual, to see that perspective. We all have been, for a better way of saying it, we have all been the victim. We've all been the perpetrator. You know, we've all been killed and been, you know, killed and been killed, and so on and so forth. And as a soul for
not only have we all been that already from reincarnation in the past life, but we are also going to live that and experience it anyway in the life review, where you can live other people's experiences as well.
Right.
So it's very interesting. It still leaves a question. I'll let you go, so I won't start another topic. But it still leaves the question of, what could society look like if we didn't have the greed, if everybody understood their spiritual essence? And I would say, first off, you know, the first step is we wouldn't have Elon and Jeff Bezos pushing our face every day for the race to the top of capitalism. Maybe we could have a race to the top of, you know, the most loving organizations.
Right.
You know, maybe loving organizations are on YouTube every day. Look at this. Look how much love, or whatever. Imagine a different scenario.
I believe that all things are possible, and we're definitely getting there. So even though the state of the world is, you know, there are a lot of things going on, look at how much progress we've made, you know, and people are becoming more loving, and I meet kind people every day, and I meet loving people every day. And I'd like to state that to myself to get that experience, that reflection back. But one question I had for you before I go is, do you think, it's just opinion stuff, that you and I, made an agreement to do this prior to this lifetime, this podcast, what we're doing right now? Feels like it's coming together.
Shit, man. I don't know. I don't doubt it. I can't imagine the amount of planning that's gone into, you know,
kind of goes it goes into what Lisa was saying. She's like, her feeling familiar when she connected with you.
Exactly. And yeah, so it's obvious, like, don't doubt it, because you have infinite time, infinite planning, you know, and then obviously all the NDE stories of all the souls and how they interact. Yeah, I mean,
life is funny that way.
It's like, but could I know that? Can I know that now? If I meditate deeply enough, would I find your answer there?
Maybe. I know through meditation, people have all kinds of experiences like that, where people will meditate, and when they finally get the hang of it, and it can be challenging to meditate in the sitting down and focusing or listening to transcendental meditation. That might be good for you. If you haven't, you can look into transcendental meditation.
I need help with all the meditation. We'll talk about that later. Yeah. None of it seems to work.
But yeah, everyone's different. But people will get into those states of awareness where they then connect with all that is, and they get a lot of the questions they ask answered, and it's validated for them, and then they'll have that understanding. But I know it can be challenging because, you know, I didn't grow up meditating, so it took a lot of practice to sit there for an hour. But you don't have to sit there for an hour. You can do 10 minutes. You can do 15 to 20-minute meditations and still have a profound experience. So it just takes time and effort.
Who I consider one of the greatest spiritual leaders, at least the only one that I know of America, but he's a great spiritual leader. He says that it's kind of ridiculous that people consider meditation a 1 hour thing where you have to go deeply into it. He says, you're meditating all the time.
Yeah.
He says, just be present, be aware of your spiritual essence and feel it. Like, that's meditation. You can do it. You should do it all the time. He says you should do it every time.
People are meditating when they're painting and they're lost in the painting, just painting that, or making music and they're lost in the making music, or like we said this before, like you programming and you just get lost in the creative side of programming or doing what you want to do. And a lot of times when you get lost in that, that's when intuition speaks to you, when you're like, oh my God, I got a great idea all of a sudden. And that comes to you, you know?
Yes. Yeah. When I was building it, I had to get lost in that intuition place a lot. Talk about that more later. Cool. You have some fun plans?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I just, yeah, my friend's coming over, and I didn't know how long we would be. I planned around it just because I knew you told me how long Lisa had, but yeah, and
8 hours minimum, Christian. That's 8 hours podcast. I'm gonna go for it.
we can
It's the
definitely
new
do that.
standard. People are gonna love it.
Yeah, right. And
Section a whole day of your time.
yeah, we can
It's
do
fine,
that.
to watch it.
And it's also the editing, because I do end up listening to these podcasts again, and I put everything in, or pictures or references, and then I have to. And the longer the podcast is, I don't mind doing it. It's just out of like the time that I have.
Then you're gonna review it again when you get up to the NDE world. So
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And yeah.
But hey, like I said before, I think I've watched 2-hour podcasts and I haven't blinked an eye. If
Oh
it was
yeah,
interesting,
me too.
I
I don't mind it either.
Right?
It's just the amount of time it takes me to edit with everything else I have to, like, daily life I have to live. Because if this was all I was doing and this was paying the bills, I would do it. And we would do like 10-hour podcast, 20 hour. I wouldn't care, because I could talk about this stuff all day. But yeah.
All right, Christian. Well, we'll plan our next one soon. Hope you can reach out to the what's the lady's name? Is it a lady or a guy?
Oh, Jeff Tolley. Yeah, I'm gonna try. We'll see. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. He's going to be the first person I actually try reaching out to, and I will send you an actual video of his experience where he talks about it. And he's also great because he can talk about all the kinds of experiences we're talking about, because he's there. He's like, when I talk about other dimensions based on his experience and ET beings and what he's shown. Huh?
Did he have one?
Yeah, he had a life review, and he was also shown a prophetic, like, where we're going as a society. And there's another near-death experiencer who was shown like where we're going as a society and what's to come in the future and what's happening. And what they saw was a much different world than what we live in today, where we're more loving beings and people. Yeah. And based on that love, we stop doing certain things like war. We have free energy. We don't have gasoline, coal, and oil. We don't rely on the things that are destroying the earth. And that's what he was shown and where we're going. ET beings, he talks about all that, which is crazy. I'll send that to you. And yeah, maybe we'll even put up a video of him at some point so everyone else can see. But I'll try to get him on the podcast. That would be awesome. And he can share his experiences firsthand.
I believe in
I got his
utopia
email.
type of. Oh, cool. Yeah, I believe in a utopia type.
It's possible. Absolutely.
Well, especially with this.
We just have to get there, and we're getting there. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.